Perfect. Are we gonna have Maureen tonight?
We should. She was looking at the minutes and she didn't say she was going to be absent. I think it's just Ian we're missing, right, Joe?
I think so.
Jeff and Joanne, sorry to interrupt. I'm getting text messages from members of the public asking how they can participate. I don't know.
So they'll have to just go to the YouTube channel and follow the directions on YouTube.
Thank you very much, Ashley.
All right, so it
Hey,
is. Sorry,
Real
go
quick,
ahead.
Vince, Joanne will send you the YouTube link again if you want to forward it to them as well.
All right, so it's just after 5 and we're gonna get going. So I'll begin by reading our remote script and then we will start with tonight's agenda. So as a preliminary matter, this is Ashley Arisman, Chair of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mark Beal.
Present.
Seth Engelborg.
Here.
Arisman, aye. Dave LaFleur.
Here.
Looks like we're waiting on Maureen. Joe Topham.
Here.
Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jeff Carlson.
Present.
Joanne Dodd.
Present.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Around, we have Trevor Johnson.
Here.
Amy Whitesides.
Hello.
Vince Murphy.
Present.
Art Gasparo.
Here.
Who is on Nick's iPad?
Tom Larrabee and Nick Larrabee.
Perfect, thank you. Katie Barnacle.
Here. Sorry.
That's okay. Chelsea Kilborn.
I'm here.
Paul Peters. Might not be able to hear. Paul, we can't hear you if you're trying to speak.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Perfect. Mark Ritz.
I'm here as well.
Okay. And Nick Darris.
Good evening.
And then we have Tori Brown. Okay. So good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Conservation.
Me? Sorry.
Yep.
I'm here.
Oh, perfect.
Maureen.
Hi, Maureen.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No worries. So good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Conservation Commission is continuing by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the TOWD's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. Staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. The chair and/or staff will do their best to address questions and comments. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So with that, we will begin the public meeting with public comment. We do have a short presentation tonight. That presentation is by Arcadis, Trevor Johnson, and Chelsea Kilborn, and it's about the coastal resiliency plans. So Chelsea and Trevor, would you like to take over?
Sure. Thanks for having us here tonight. And just to note that we're also joined by team member Amy Whitesides as well, who is a member of our team. Do you want me to share my screen, or will you share your screen?
The screen is shared by Joanne, so your presentation is up.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Thanks, Joanne.
So I think it's better, Trevor, if you share your screen, because then you can control the slides as you
Okay.
go through a little bit better.
Yeah, as long as that's fine, I'm perfectly happy
Absolutely.
to do that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I should be sharing my window here. Let me know when you can see the slides.
So we can see the slides.
Great. All right. Well, again, thanks so much for putting us on the agenda and speaking with us today. I'm going to present for about 20 minutes here, and then we can open it up to questions, comment, and discussion. So what
Trevor?
we'll cover. Oh, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure that you're aware that we can see your screen that has notes as well as the next slide, not just
my mistake. All right. I'm sharing
just a heads up.
wrong. Yeah, thank you for alerting me, Chelsea.
No problem.
Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Okay.
That looks good.
Can you see it now? Is that right? All right, great. Thanks so much. So let's see, where was I? What we'll cover today. So the meeting objectives are to provide an overview of the Coastal Resilience Plan project team process and scope, clarify what we think is needed to ensure project success, and to seek input on the town's coastal resilience concerns and opportunities. So I'll provide a quick overview of the project, the different roles and responsibilities as we see them. I do want to focus on our community engagement approach, as that's been a focus of ours early in this project process, and we see it as critical to the success of the project overall, and then discuss next steps and questions and discussion. So our project team, we are, I work with Arcadis. I am a resilience planner by training. Arcadis is a global design and engineering firm based globally in the Netherlands, but we have a significant presence here in the United States. We have a specialization, part and parcel of our origin in the Netherlands around water management and resilience, and have worked with communities around the country on coastal resilience, and are very happy to be working with the Nantucket community on this project. And we also have a highly multidisciplinary team, so joined by Chelsea and Amy here today from Stoss, which is a landscape architecture and planning firm with equal expertise and experience in resilience planning and design. Similar for One Architecture, which is an architecture firm based in New York City, and then the Craig Group, who many members of the Conservation Commission and public may be familiar with, as they are currently undertaking a project called Resilient Nantucket, which we are aligning with in our process as well. And our project principles, we do kind of begin this project by making sure that we're grounding ourselves in principles that are rooted in the community. So first and foremost, honoring the community heritage and identity as we develop our adaptation and resilience solutions. We know that Nantucket is a very special place and has a very unique character, and that resilience needs to take that into account. We do look to address resilience at multiple scales. So looking at everything from the particular pieces of infrastructure and asset and buildings all the way out to the larger ecological scale. Inclusive and responsive stakeholder engagement. We'll talk more about engagement, but we do think it is the backbone of a successful planning process. And then finally, bringing a commitment to implementation. We presented to the select board last night, and one of the notes there was to just make sure that we don't have a plan that sits on a shelf. And we've heard that many times. And our goal here really is to make sure that the projects that we recommend become shovels in the ground in some cases where appropriate. And this is just, we did make a site visit, our team, members of our team to Nantucket. I think this was November 12th of last year. And this is Pulpus Harbor, where we experienced all of the weather, the wonderful weather that Nantucket has to offer. So just a project overview. The goal of the project is to develop a comprehensive plan to address coastal flooding, sea level rise, and erosion for the entire island. The process will include identifying important community assets and infrastructure, assessing vulnerabilities and risks from future flooding and erosion, identifying actions to reduce coastal flood and erosion risks, and then finally developing a detailed, prioritized resilience and adaptation action plan. We've developed a project mission statement that we worked closely with Vince and his colleagues in the Natural Resources Department, as well as stakeholders. This is a living statement, but the goal is to ensure that whenever we're talking to the community or any other stakeholders, that we're really grounding the conversation in a shared understanding of what we're trying to achieve. So I'll just read this now. And again, this is living. We can discuss this if there are aspects that you'd like to see incorporated. The mission of the Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan is to draw on the cherished built and natural heritage of Nantucket to create a community-supported roadmap to implementation for a series of layered flood control and adaptation approaches that lessen the loss from storm surges and help the community adapt to rising seas and eroding coastlines. In coordination with other ongoing adaptation and sustainability initiatives, the plan addresses the whole island and county while respecting the unique characteristics of each neighborhood. Driven by the inclusive and equitable engagement of all, the plan aspires to create social, environmental, and economic benefits and value to everyone who will share in Nantucket's future. A little bit about our scope of investigation. Again, the risks that we are looking at are coastal flooding and storm surge, sea level rise, and coastal erosion. We are looking at the island wide, as I mentioned, so all of Nantucket as well as the sister islands. We will look at the built environment, critical infrastructure, natural resources, as well as the kind of interdependencies that exist between these elements of the island and infrastructure. And then in terms of solution development, we really start with the broadest toolkit, and we'll look to refine that as we work through the technical process and the community engagement process. So looking at more traditional structural risk reduction measures where appropriate. Nature-based solutions, I think our team and obviously the community, something that we've heard as a major theme thus far is a preference for nature-based solutions where effective and appropriate. And that's certainly a value that our team brings to the table as well. But then also looking at policy and regulatory solutions and that toolkit of potential changes to town bylaws and ordinances, and then guidance and education with the awareness that a significant amount of property on Nantucket is privately owned, and there is a need to make sure that private property owners are effectively prepared to adapt over time. Summary of our tasks, we sort of divided into 5 tasks here. The first is sort of kickoff and data gathering, which we've completed. The community engagement process is underway, as is the hazard assessment and risk and vulnerability assessment. Later in the process, as I'll talk about on this slide, we'll look at scenario development and then finally developing the resilience and adaptation action plan and final report. I should say here that the milestones marked delineate a couple of events that I would just like to put on your radar. The first is at the end of January, on January 28th, in fact. In the evening, we'll have our first public open house, and we are looking to have really broad representation from the community participate in that event. And so as next week, we'll be working with Vince and other folks in the town to make sure that word is getting out, but save the date, if you will. And then we'll have a later open house sometime in the spring, date to be determined, but as we get into the sort of scenario and solution development process. And then finally in March, I should say, we'll also be delivering our mid-project report that will provide the output of our risk analysis, as well as the update on the stakeholder engagement process. And then community engagement, we'll talk more about this in a moment, but we are currently in what we're calling phase 1 engagement, or wrapping up, I should say, which has been a listening tour, and that's why we're here tonight. We're here to really hear from the Conservation Commission members and understand what your priorities and goals and concerns are, and really to download information to us. We very much see you all as the experts at this stage of the project, and look forward to learning from you. And then as we go through the process, we'll have additional phases of outreach that are more focused on a larger public engagement, and then finally implementation planning toward the latter end of the project. And of course, as you're well aware, Nantucket has done a significant amount of, Nantucket and the region has done a significant amount of planning and analysis around these questions and issues over the past decade or so, including several very recent reports from 2019. And so we're very much launching from these projects. So our goal is to honor, leverage, and advance, but not supplant, disrupt, or duplicate other resilience efforts on Nantucket. But feel very fortunate to have this foundation to kind of launch from. These are questions that drive our process, questions that we're asking ourselves as we begin to undertake our analyses. So some of the questions that we're considering are, what are the shared challenges and opportunities? What are the key conflicts and tensions that need to be resolved? What information and recommendations from prior studies should we carry forward? And conversely, which might need to be reassessed through our process? What are the urgent needs to reduce risk? What do decision makers and key stakeholders need to be able to move forward immediately with the recommendations? Are there gaps in knowledge and understanding that we can help fill? Where can we help advance and catalyze? And what are the kind of low-hanging fruit? What are the things we know we need to do, and the projects that can help build momentum towards lasting change? And then finally, resilience is about more than risk reduction. So we want to look at the ways that this project can add social, economic, and ecological value, and really improve quality of life on Nantucket over the long term. Sorry, apologies that this graphic might be a little bit tough to interpret, but I'll explain it. We very much see everybody on all of our stakeholders, the community at large, as part of this process. We're all in this together. And so we're at the center of a large conversation that needs to happen over the coming months. And so we're working closely as part of this kind of nested structure with the town of Nantucket and Vince and his colleagues in the Natural Resources Department. We're also working very closely with the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. We see them very much as our steering committee, and we'll be presenting to them on Tuesday of next week. And then finally, town boards and committees, such as the Conservation Commission, are critical stakeholders that we look forward to engaging throughout this process. And then, of course, the general public. And so information is flowing in both directions across each of these lenses, if you will, of the community. So I want to just talk a little bit about the community engagement approach, so it's very clear how we're going to be talking with stakeholders throughout this process. And I would also say that we have launched the project website, and on it you can find the detailed community engagement plan that is a living document, and will be changing as we go, but it is a detailed overview of how we will be engaging the community as we move through the process, in an effort to be fully transparent about that. So we've done quite a bit of engagement already. We're wrapping up our listening tour. I think we've talked to about 15 town departments and organizations at this stage, and really have got a lot of valuable input. Some of the things that we've heard so far is that the plan needs to be based in the latest climate science and robust technical analysis, but it also needs to involve extensive community engagement to reach the entire island, and that means both seasonal and year-round residents. We want to lead to a project that leads to clear, actionable, and prioritized solutions. It needs to be comprehensive in scope and lead to solutions that are for both built and natural resources. Provide recommendations for both nature-based and gray infrastructure, as well as those policy and regulatory changes. Provide detailed guidance on implementation, including near-term pilot projects. Pilot projects can be a great way to, again, sort of test ideas and build momentum to kind of show progress and build additional champions for non-pilot projects. Seek to provide co-beneficial infrastructure, or infrastructure that serves multiple purposes. And then finally, honoring and protecting the unique built and natural heritage of Nantucket. We have engagement principles. This is, really about how we aim to bring, or how we aim to conduct our outreach in a variety of forms. So we do want to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that those communities and people who have not been engaged in prior planning processes are brought into the fold as much as possible. We want to foster optimism and energy. There's I think a tendency to have kind of a pessimistic outlook on climate change, and indeed it is quite a serious topic. But the work of resilience planning is inherently optimistic. We have to help imagine a better future, more resilient future, and that's what we want to bring to our engagement. We are not here to develop solutions and just seek feedback and then come back to the community. We actually want to co-create the solutions and then work to refine those over time with the community. We think this is the most effective way to build the community's capacity to carry the process forward. And then finally, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, public health and safety is a critical concern, and so we'll be doing all of our engagement virtually for at least the near to midterm. Certainly that can make engagement more challenging, so part of our job is to make sure we're creative about how we're making the process of engaging easy, accessible, and fun. I won't read these, but in depth, they're in the community engagement plan, but we are our goals are really to have a process that empowers the community with information, and that people leave the process feeling that they understand what the recommendations are and how to carry them forward. We want to have a mutually valuable experience. So thinking about the ways that participation in the process isn't just extractive. We're not just gaining information from the community, but actually participation is really valuable to those who participate in it as well. And then finally, I think this is a theme that I've touched on earlier in this presentation, is just cultivating champions. So looking for those stakeholders and people who are really ready to help drive the project forward when we complete it in September 2021, September of this year, I should say. And this is just a graphic about the engagement approach. We are seeking both depth and breadth. So the level of engagement may not be as high for those where for areas where we're looking for a real breadth of engagement, trying to inform as many people as possible and get as much input as we can. And then for certain stakeholders, we really want to have multiple deep engagement activities and targeted discussions. A fewer number of people, of course, but truly very meaningful conversations. We have a pretty exhaustive list of organizations that we're working to engage. This is a snapshot from it. There are others in our database. These are the groups that we really look forward to communicating with throughout the process. And then I mentioned our listening tour, which we're kind of wrapping up. The groups listed here are the ones that we've talked to or are going to talk to. If you're not on this list, it doesn't mean we don't want to talk to you. It just means that we're kind of being strategic in how we're approaching our engagement and trying to target kind of critical departments and organizations early in the process, because we know that they're going to be integral to the rest of our effort here. And this is a toolkit within the context of COVID-19. We, obviously have an emphasis on virtual tools using the web, virtual meetings, social media, but we also think there's opportunities to do things that may be a little bit more personal, hopefully, as we move forward. So we're trying to look for opportunities, as I mentioned before, to be as creative as possible. And yeah, we did launch the website. I think it's even gotten a refresh today. So we would love for folks to go check it out and learn a little bit more about the process. There's also a short form that takes about 2 minutes to fill out. It's really just a contact information collection form. We're trying to get as much contact information as we can, so we can be sure to keep people updated on progress and what's happening. We're also, in the process of launching an application that we'll use for virtual engagement, an opportunity for people to use their smartphones to, do sort of co-mapping and fill out surveys and learn about the project, and look for more information on that in late January. This is just our engagement schedule, which again does track throughout the entire process. And then next steps, so we're moving forward with our second phase of engagement, which is more community-wide focus, launching with our community open house on the evening of January 28th. We're working on our risk and vulnerability assessment. And then finally, as we move towards the spring here, we'll be looking at developing our resilience and adaptation approaches and scenarios. So I'll stop there. I do have some questions here that might prompt some discussion just about what the town's primary goals and objectives for the project should be, what legacy you really feel it needs to leave behind, and conversely, what do you really not want to see? And then with respect to critical elements, just, what are the things that we absolutely need to know as we undertake this project? Anything that we should be in the lookout for in terms of pitfalls. And a question we really like to ask is, what solutions are off the table for you? What is something that you would view as something that we really shouldn't be considering in the context of Nantucket? So thanks very much. I appreciate it. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time there, and at the same time didn't go too fast. So happy to answer any questions. And Amy and Chelsea, I think if you have anything to add, as long as the chair is okay with it, we could do that as well.
Yep. Thank you, Trevor. I can't see questions while you're screen sharing.
Yep, I'm going to stop sharing here.
Perfect. Thank you for all of that information. That's so helpful for us to have this presentation early so we can process everything. Are there any questions from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Trevor. I thought it was a great presentation. One stakeholder that I saw that was noticeably absent, the slides were a little bit quick, but I don't think it was on there, is Nantucket Memorial Airport. They're the third largest landowner on Nantucket and a key hub of transportation infrastructure. So I think they should be contacted as soon as possible in this process to have their input here.
Thank you, Seth. Maureen, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. I was thinking of a couple of things. One is for people to contact. You had the Civic League, which is the, as you know, the group of neighborhood associations, and I would just suggest that there are some, including the one that I'm active in, the Nantucket Conservation Association, which also has its own coastal erosion committee, because the issues are so critical to the west end of the island. And I assume you're aware of that. But the neighborhood associations that have that deal with the properties around the coast are, I think, a very important group to make sure you get a chance to talk to them directly and not just through the umbrella organization, the Civic League. And they're great. I mean, the Civic League is terrific, but individual associations in some cases I think could be really helpful. Another thing is I am a recovering lawyer, and something that I didn't see on here at all, and I often do when there's big plans going on, any discussion of, or you all pointing out what might be the legal implications of any of your recommendations, bringing regulations up to speed, what, other things like that, where in order to facilitate or even execute a recommendation, sometimes some work on the legal side would be necessary. And I certainly don't expect you guys, to do any of that, but is that something typically you highlight, or how do you handle that?
Trevor, do you have a response, or does somebody else in your group have a response?
I'm happy to give a response. I think one, on the neighborhood associations, we've certainly heard that loud and clear from other folks as well, and do look forward to engaging with the neighborhood associations as we move through the process individually. On the legal ramifications, so regulatory, reviews of the town's ordinances and bylaws is part of our scope, and what part of what we'll be doing, and we'll make recommendations for additional changes or new ordinances and bylaws, and in some cases, if appropriate, including looking at the wetlands bylaw and seeing if there are opportunities to advance or consider resilience through that. So I know some Massachusetts communities have been making amendments to their local bylaws in the context of climate change. And then I think in terms of legality, I mean, we certainly, obviously, any changes would need to go through town council and potentially the attorney general and so forth. Yeah. So we can flag that as a need. We don't have an attorney on our team, but yeah, we would certainly flag the need as part of the implementation strategy, the need for legal review.
If I may, just a quick follow up, Ashley.
Yes.
So the regulatory, the fact that you are going to be looking specifically at regulatory changes and improvements, I just want to say that is terrific, because that is something that we're looking at it ourselves, and I know other groups on the island are, and I think that getting advice from you all about what you think, and also what the trends are and what have you, I think that will be extremely helpful. So I'm really glad that's in it. And I had one last question, which may be kind of tough to answer. I'm not sure, but we have and I think you recognize it, but there are certainly different attitudes towards how coastal erosion and resiliency should be addressed in different parts of the island. And some people are noisier than others, and some people may have more influence, and there may have been past, skirmishes or whatever you want to call it. But that's a kind of thing. Pitfalls. I guess you mentioned pitfalls, and that's what leapt out to me to make sure you're able to get from whom you speak to, because we've had consultants in the past who kind of didn't realize that and came up with solutions that, were, they weren't going to work. And so it sounds like you guys are doing a very complete job, but I just wanted to emphasize that. And we also have, like most coastal communities, a push-pull all the time between development and conservation. And those are very, very important issues for the town. And the select board, has to deal with both of those. We don't have to deal with development per se here, but again, that's an important potential conflict, or at least looking at things from both sides, and how you manage development in a way that can be helpful, to help the island, what kind of growth makes sense given the realities of climate change. So, and I think, really looking at it that way. So getting, you were talking about legacies, having a science-based plan. If that's, I assume that's what we'll be getting from you all. But having a real science-based plan that also is one that gives direction about how to update it and all of that, I think is going to be, an operational plan. I mean, obviously I'm not saying the town never has had one, but I'm saying that that would be, to my mind, the best legacy going forward. And I wish you luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Mark?
Through the chairman, Trevor, I expect that this commission will be put under a lot of pressure with conflicting protection of natural resources and protecting public and private property as sea levels rise. And I'm not sure how it can be addressed without some pretty serious new regulations. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Trevor, would you like to respond?
Yeah, that's not an easy question to answer in a short time frame. But I think, yeah, you're right. Obviously, there are significant tensions and conflicts that are already occurring, I'm sure, as you're seeing on your agendas, but will continue to occur in the decades ahead. I do think that the regulations and the sort of policy approaches are going to be really critical to helping ensure that where development and growth is happening or might be able to happen now is thought about in a different way in the context of climate change. We don't want to be making decisions today that put us in a difficult position in the future. So that's I think part of it. To be honest, we're not at the point of the project where we're ready to come out with recommendations or talk about what the right approach might be, but it's on our radar as kind of, there's no easy solution, right? And there's there's not necessarily a way to achieve outcomes that everybody agrees to. So part of the process, part of the community engagement process is going to be identifying those areas and trying to reach some kind of consensus. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, maybe a little bit of a sidestep, but we can continue it as we move forward.
Thank you, Trevor. Mark, did that kind of answer your question?
It did. I mean, I knew it was a tough question, and there's not going to be an easy answer.
Yes. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you. My training is as an ecologist. As a disclaimer, I work for one of the conservation organizations that's listed on your stakeholder sheet, the Linda Laurie Nature Foundation. And I know it's been said by members of the public and your stakeholders already that nature-based solutions are critical to this process. And I'd like to reaffirm that statement. Nantucket is a unique place for many reasons, but one of the things that makes us unique is that more than 50% of our island is in permanent protected conservation land. So I would say that prioritizing nature-based solutions and living shorelines and even hybrid type solutions first is really critical before considering any type of built infrastructure. If we look at the two key tools of coastal resiliency, adaptation and mitigation, in my mind, adaptation should be 90% of the process, and mitigation should only be used to protect critical infrastructure in areas where it's completely necessary and there's no alternative. Other people might see it differently, but I think that we do have a responsibility to protect the historic buildings and historic infrastructure of Nantucket. But in order to have long-lasting effectual change that isn't running up against extremely difficult legal issues and challenges, we really need to focus on adaptation before we even think about mitigation. So I would say that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. I have to say I'm in agreement with Seth as somebody who grew up out here and really enjoys the natural beaches and banks and bluffs. The thought of nature-based solutions is really one of the only ways I see us truly moving forward, with all of the coastal development we now have. So I do think that's going to be important to protect the natural environment here. Any other thoughts from commissioners? Jeff?
Just as a reminder to everybody. So Ian Golding is our representative to the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. So I know that he has the ability, if people do have thoughts in the future, to, share them with Ian, and our Arcadis visits them pretty regularly, or if anyone has any other questions or concerns or thoughts, obviously feel free to forward them to either me or to Vince Murphy in our office, our Coastal Resiliency Coordinator, and he can get those to Arcadis. And I think we'll probably see Arcadis back at some point in the future in some form, and I know they would definitely encourage everyone to participate through the entire process. So just wanted to get that out to remind everyone as well.
Thank you, Jeff. If there are no other questions from commissioners, Jeff, do we have any public comments or questions? Okay. So Trevor, you said that the public forum that you're having is January 28th?
Yes, January 28th. I think the timing is almost solidified as starting at 5:30. Vince can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, certainly be looking for more information on the town's website, social media, and other platforms over the coming weeks for the sort of access information.
Okay, perfect. I know we won't be able to attend that night, but hopefully the public will be there with plenty of enthusiasm.
Yeah, I do apologize that we had to schedule it over the Conservation Commission, but you guys have a lot of meetings in the evenings.
That is true. Well, thank you, Trevor, and Chelsea and Amy for being here and presenting to us tonight. This is really helpful information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you, Vince, as well. Okay, so at this point, I will read through our continuances for this evening. Under notices of intent, we have Weisenberger at 84 Pocomo Road, continued until January 28th. We have Randy Sharp at 1 Wamasquid Place, continued until January 28th. We have Troja Nominee Trust at 26 Easy Street, continued until January 28th. That looks like all of our continuances. So at this point, we will open up Jeff, do we have public comment, just regular public comment? Looks like no.
No, I asked at the start and I haven't seen any, so I think we're good.
Okay. So then we will begin under notices of intent with 5 Sherburne Way LLC at 5 Sherburne Way, and this is represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with the 3rd public hearing for the residential redevelopment within the buffer zone to the stable vegetated coastal bank along Sherburne Way. And some of the discussion at the last meeting revolved around grading, a request for a transect to better understand the elevations. And so what I've done is to show a transect through the structure, show the grade change that is proposed, as well as to, it has not changed the limit of work that has been applied for since the initial application. We've added some subsurface drainage. So I put in essentially a yard catch basin at the lowest spot, and also had discussions with the applicant and his architect who's working on this plan, and they are committed to gutters and downspouts on the structure, so that we can again direct that all to the subsurface infiltration. The much of which would likely be outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, but I did want to show for the north side of the house and that yard basin that we could put that into a row of infiltrators or the like, and again try to reduce any surface flow. And I think that all that will go towards addressing the concerns that there may be some kind of a because of the grade changing or the redevelopment, an increase in stormwater runoff. I would also point out that there is a 25-foot buffer zone between the top of the bank as well. And a portion of that is currently lawn, but we're not proposing any changes in that area. And with that, I would also just point out that from the transects, you can see that we are doing, the lot drops, from the high side up around elevation 68, 69 to the low side down to between 62 and 63. And we are trying to, balance that in between as well. With that, I'd be happy to address if there are any outstanding questions or concerns.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Joe?
Yeah, Art, thank you for the transect, but I was hoping for just like a cross section showing structures like the retaining wall, the house. I'd like to see a whole cut through of the property, or a couple. I think 3 or 4 of them would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Art, is that something you think you could provide?
No, the house hasn't been designed, at this point. We're sort of between, boards, and we really, thought that at this point that it's a sort of a conceptual design, and we are again taking out quite a bit of structure within the 50-foot buffer zone, and are completely outside of that now. And I think that, so I don't have that information, to provide. I did show on the transect, and I mean, perhaps it's not as clear, but I did the red lines to show the elevation of the first floor and of the patio in an effort to try to, not just give you a profile of existing grade, but to show, how that, what the proposed elevations and grading would be like, essentially trying to plateau and meet in the middle between the, those two, the grades on the east and the west side. And I would also just, take back to, at that point, when we're looking at what are the protected interests in the resource area, I hope that there is enough information with essentially the grading that is shown to, for the commission to reach a level of comfort that there would not be an adverse impact on those protected interests.
Thank you, Art. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public on this one?
Not as of yet, but I did forget to enter it into the comments, so stand by once again.
All right, give it a minute.
We haven't historically gotten comments on this one, but
Yeah, and I think our public pretty much knows that they can just kind of type freely or have been. Jeff, do we have everything we need to close this one?
you do have all of the required information, yes.
Okay. Art, what would you like to do?
I'd like to close, please.
Okay. Is there a motion to close? A motion made by Dave. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
I wanted to ask Joe if he was satisfied with the answer that you got from Art on your request.
No, but I think he's got enough votes, so I'm gonna quietly sit here.
so Mark, that was a question and not a second. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So the motion has been made to close. We're looking for a second. Seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
No.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips. You're muted, Maureen.
No.
Okay, Topham.
Opposed.
All right, so that does not carry. Jeff?
So we were just voting not necessarily on the project, but on the public hearing. So the public hearing would remain open at this point. So that wasn't a vote on to approve the project or not.
I think that the other three commissioners are looking for that more information, is what it sounds like. Art?
Really, could you guys help? I mean, what is it that you really need? I guess I'm not quite clear. You're looking for a full cross section of the house and the structures when they're not essentially designed on a. I guess that perhaps you could give me some guidance.
Joe?
Oh, through the chair. All right. So I don't have a problem with the dwelling. I think that's fine. You pulled that out, but I feel like the patio and 3 feet of fill and a retaining wall, it kind of becomes a structure in my mind. So, but I'm not sure without seeing a drawing. We have permitted other such structures, but I'd like more information before I give a vote. That's why I'm opposed right now. Thank you.
Perhaps if I could, through you, Madam Chair, maybe we could just spend a couple more minutes on the drawing, because I've shown that stuff on the drawing and the grades, and perhaps because I'm working at the smaller scale, maybe it's not as clear. But I spent time to the retaining walls that are proposed are outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. And then the patio and the terrace, I only have a 1 foot sort of a regular step down. So I didn't really consider that to be actually retaining. In other words, I show the grade of 64. The proposed contour is labeled by the number in the box. So we went from 62 at the lowest. We've got 2 foot intervals on here. So you've got a little bit of a slope in there for just a little bit of fill. The 65 represents the elevation of the proposed terrace. And then I show a proposed retaining wall. And perhaps I should have mentioned this was added to the plan on the easterly property line. And I did show grading with the proposed top of wall and bottom of wall and stopping that wall at the 50-foot buffer zone. So I did want to meet your concerns that, and we're not proposing the wall to go up into that area. Again, it's sort of a cut, as you can see on the easterly property line. We're taking it down approximately, 3 feet and holding that back on that edge. And then, using a little bit of grading as it naturally, you can see it already naturally falls off to the north, sort of a mound there that's represented by that 68 existing contour. And on the low side, we didn't believe that there was a need for a wall on that side, and that could be handled by fill. So I show the proposed 64, which only has to then go down over a distance of 5 feet to meet an existing grade of 63. Which is I think a reasonable slope. And again, all of this is this is all outside of the 25-foot buffer zone. So I hoped that we did develop this grading plan and try to show you the the elevations that are there. And then in red, I put the patio elevation on there. I certainly don't want to be argumentative, and I want to provide you what you need. I'm just not really clear what exactly else is really going to be needed to evaluate what would be the potential impacts of the project if it's contained on site outside of the 25 with stormwater runoff remediation.
Thank you, Art. Joe, do you have any questions about the picture that was just up that would help to be explained?
No, but I mean, he's got one transect, which is nice, but it seems like that the retaining wall would be, 2.5 to 3 feet. So that's where I'm saying I think I know what you're doing on the plans, Art, but based on what I'm reading, but I just would like, a larger scale transect and then a couple more of them just to kind of help dictate that. But I also think that if it's getting over 3 feet, the retaining wall, then I'm starting to feel like it's a structure in some ways. And I understand how the architect has cut the grade and is working. I mean, it's not an easy site. I think he's done an exceptional job, but at the same time, I'm kind of having a problem with the westerly side of the retaining wall. I think it's kind of big based on that sizing and the scale of the height of that patio. So those are my concerns. So, I mean, I don't know if anyone else says the same, but that's where I think the more information I can get, then I can get a better understanding of what's going on. And we had a similar problem with a house out in Pocono. And so we had them move the patio back. And so it's something that we've been moving towards. And I think there's something in that bylaws that we're going to be altering and changing, or just give an FYI. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Art, it looks like you have a response, and then Maureen.
I held the retaining wall at 2.5 feet. So we were going from 64.5, the typical 30-inch, so that you could avoid having to have rails or fences. So we're only talking about a 2.5-foot wall along that westerly side. I guess I'm just not really seeing that this is a real big grade type of a difference that, and when you say more transects, I went through the middle of the structure. Your overall width or depth there, depth of the structure, the site is fairly uniform as it falls from east to west. So I guess I'm just at a little bit of a loss here too, as to what it would take to, and what are we talking about for protected interests, and in terms of it being a structure, yes, that's why I stopped it at the 50. I'm not proposing structural elements within the 50. I mean, the patio, whether you may in the future consider that a structural element, I think is a different issue. But as of right now, and again, I would take it back to, this is an existing site with existing structure, developed site with structures that we've removed. I'd have to go back to the plan that I don't have on my screen as well with Joe, but that I think over 1,000 square feet that's being taken out.
Madam Chair.
You are. Yes, Joe.
So, sorry, Maureen, you had a question. Go.
Oh, no, I was going to say my concern and frankly is largely based, I'm being guided by Joe, because this is not something that I have particular expertise in, but to my mind, just looking at it, and I know currently patios aren't a structure, but when you want to get credit for moving the house back, and then that all gets covered by a terrace that is, unless I'm reading it wrong, is pretty substantial and goes from edge to edge of the property. I mean, that was my concern. What are those trade-offs really worthwhile? Now, I do appreciate that you put in the filtration system and the other not drain, but the thing in the upper left corner, you had there was a, oh, you know what I mean, a drain of some kind. Yes, yes, thank you. So, I mean, those were good things, but I think we have a lot of plans where people are able to get farther along, and give us more information, obviously, before they come here. And I know they've got, like you said, you're between boards and all of that. But if we had, if you had this fully or more developed, this would be something that we could see and look at. And, and the client is, they're trying to get things done and move along. And, it's something where we just are looking for some more information because of, to my mind, because of the extent of you've got a combination of grading and retaining walls and patio, and while maybe that will all look okay when we see it, finally done, get the kind of transects that Joe is looking for. But, it still makes me feel, concerned about it, and it may well turn out to be fine, but I guess I'm just worried about, I'm concerned about that we can't be guaranteed that at this point, because we can't see exactly what that's going to be. So I'm sorry, or I know what you're saying.
No, I do. I see everybody's concerns, but I do want to just remind commissioners that currently patio is not considered structure. So we do, really have to be careful with what we're asking applicants to do until we're, rewriting our regs and clearly making those structural. Seeing patio going property line to property line, east to west, it isn't great for the resource area, but I do think that Art has kind of met his burden with this one, in my opinion. I'm just, one of 6 tonight, but we do have to be careful with looking at current regulations versus, what we think our regulations are going to look like once we rewrite. Joe and then Seth.
So maybe one thing that would help, Art, is just construction details, that the bluestone or whatever the patio is going to be on, not concrete or slab or anything. It's going to be on, something that allows the water to filtrate through, and that the retaining walls have some, weep holes, et cetera, to allow the water to pass through and not hold off from that resource area. That would definitely help. And I think that's, and I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, but that was something in the cross sections I was kind of hoping for, because I know, like, once I saw that, it would have helped my visual of the detailing that would have gone on. So that's all I'm looking for, is more construction detailing. If you can provide that, and if that's a letter that we can get through the board that states that you're going to be putting on such and such a fill and et cetera, then I'm fine with that. So, and I'm sorry, I thought your transect I knew it was in the middle, but I was more worried about the westerly lot line. But if you're saying that is going to be continuous, then it's becoming more palatable to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. It looks like Art has a response, and then we'll go to Seth.
Thank you. I did put a note on the plan to that effect, that it would be a dry laid patio, which, you certainly could add, a condition that it's to be in stone dust. The just past practice has been that essentially means that it's a non-mortared type of a patio, but I was sure to include the note referencing dry laid. In terms of the retaining wall, that's why I did put the top and bottom elevation on there, to give you an assurance that we're only talking, about a 30-inch wall. It's not an engineered type of retaining wall that is going to have significant footings and need to resist overturning and meet building codes and that sort of thing. It's much more of just a 30-inch landscape wall outside the 50-foot buffer zone. And then, finally, just to the regulations, you know, I mean, we could just take a minute to go through, you know, the protected interests, which is in the bank itself, flood control, which I don't see the project having you know, any change to that. Erosion control, I don't see the project in any way impacting, you know, the erosion control function of the bank. Storm damage prevention, same. Wetland scenic views, not from the public way, and then wildlife, again, you know, within an existing yard. So, and then finally back to under the performance standards. If we look at that, we're meeting the performance standards by keeping the structure outside of the 50. And then the project's restricted to activity to have no adverse effect on bank height, which we're not, bank stability that we're not, wildlife habitat that we're not, vegetation that we're not affecting, wetland scenic view, or use of the bank as a sand source. So I do think that when we're, you know, evaluating all of these, that it is important that we sometimes go back to how the project interacts and relates to these you know, performance standards and protected interests. I would say the one that I did think that, you know, we wanted to be sure to address would be stormwater runoff, and that could there potentially be any, you know, impact from that related to the project, which is why we're trying to capture all of that water. But I don't want to belabor the point, but I do, you know, hope that you know, there would be enough information that's been provided to, you know, to approve the project in accordance with the regulations. I would be wondering, on the basis of a denial, you know, what that would be.
Thank you, Art. Joe, do you have a reply to that? And then we'll go to Seth.
Thank you, Art. That information was very helpful, and that I'm feeling much better about the project. So thank you, and we'll take back my opposition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Art basically said what I was going to say, but looking through the 9 performance standards for coastal banks, I don't see any reason why this project isn't meeting all of them. And in terms of the protected interests, I also don't see any issue. This is there's no structure in the 50-foot buffer. There's subsurface infiltration catching any water runoff. And even if there wasn't that there, this coastal bank is well vegetated with a variety of mature shrubs that can handle that runoff anyway. So I think that by moving the structures out of the 50 and creating that subsurface infiltration, it might be nice to see more construction detail, but I don't think ultimately that's going to affect how the project is meeting the performance standards. I think that having plot line, patio and retaining wall maybe isn't a practice that is going to be great ecologically, but regulatorily, I don't see anything wrong with this project.
Thank you, Seth. Maureen?
Having heard my respected fellow commissioners, I think I can withdraw my objection as well. Yes, I can withdraw my objection.
Okay.
So thank you, Art, for being patient.
Thank you, Art. So at this point, should we make another motion? Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Maureen, and it looked like seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Art.
Thank you.
Art.
That moves us on to High Tide Partners LLC at 8 Ackermuck Way, Lot 1, and this is represented by Mark Ritz.
Good evening. Mark Ritz from Site Design representing the applicant. Um, This is our second meeting on this particular project. At the last meeting, members of the commission requested additional information on grading and some of the proposed vegetation disturbance. I have attempted to answer those questions by providing a revised site plan as well as some site photos of the areas that we're looking to do work in. Um, I'd like to start by discussing the revised site plan. As discussed previously, we have a retaining wall proposed outside of the 50-foot buffer. The retaining wall will start on the northern portion of the wall, where it will have an exposure of approximately 1 foot, and the bulk of the retaining wall hugs the current 27-foot contour, and top of wall will be approximately 29 feet. And then on the southern portion of the wall, it dips down to just above the 25-foot contour. So we'll have a maximum exposure of just under 4 feet of wall along the length of the wall. Additionally, the grading we're proposing on this project, I know the commissioners are used to us proposing a tremendous amount of fill. In this case, we're actually bringing down the grade. The maximum elevation on the site occurs between the proposed dwelling and the pool. In the patio area there, we've got a 35.1 spot grade. We're proposing to bring the bulk of the property down to an elevation of 30. So we're trying to flatten out the area where we're proposing to build, create a small area around the proposed house that will be relatively flat landscaped lawn area, which will provide an area where runoff from the structure can actually infiltrate in a flat area instead of running down an extremely steep slope to the wetland. It'll give us a little bit more area for infiltration. And we will fill slightly behind the retaining wall, but a maximum of about 3.5 feet on the south and about 1 foot on the north. The plan shows the dashed lines are the existing contours, and the heavyweight black lines with the elevations and boxes are the proposed contours. And you can see that most of the contour change is occurring actually on the north side of the property, outside of the buffer zone, where we have a little bit of contouring that we're going to do on the east. But really most of the heavy, contour alterations are to the north. Now, I'd be happy to answer any questions on that portion of it, or I can discuss some of the vegetation concerns from the last meeting as well, whatever the commissioners would prefer.
Why don't you kind of discuss all your information if you have more to add, and then we can ask our questions.
That's fine. I also submitted a letter dated December 31st that included site photographs of the area that we are proposing to do work in. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to look at those. Portions of this property had been previously landscaped. There are areas where there's still some lawn grass remaining under some trees. Parts of it are overgrown. Some of the photos show old irrigation lines that are sticking out at surface. We are not proposing any irrigation. We're actually, I discussed in the letter that we'll remove any relic irrigation in that area. We're not proposing any new irrigation, but you can see that clearly the area has been previously altered and it's sort of fallen into a bit of lack of maintenance over recent years. The areas that we're proposing to do our alteration in are exemplified by photos 1 through 5, which show a lot of sort of overgrown grass, a few sparse, relatively small trees, and a lot of vines choking everything out. The area between the 25-foot and 50-foot buffer that we're proposing to leave alone is exemplified by photos 6 and 7, which are looking towards the wetland, and you can see significantly denser native vegetation that we're not proposing to touch. That's within our that's within the 50% of the 25 to 50-foot buffer that we're not touching. We're also proposing to install either split rail fence or protruding wooden posts to demarcate the sort of the limit, the 50% limit of the 25 to 50-foot buffer zone. And the areas that we are proposing to alter are not densely natively vegetated currently.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Related to the alteration of areas within the 25 to 50-foot buffer, is all the area to be altered previously altered already? So it's in those typical landscaped areas that you're talking about, or will some of it be occurring in non-altered areas as well?
It's all, you know, with the exception of maybe a foot or two on the southern side, it's all, you know, I went out there with a tape and I tried to tape off distances from the wetland flags. It is, I would say, in the upper 90s percentile of within those previously altered and landscaped areas that have been left to go to seed for a couple of years.
Thank you, Mark.
And just one follow-up as well. Thank you, Mark. Also, within those areas, I did notice that there are some trees. I would hope that we would put a condition into place requiring the applicant to maintain trees above a DBH of 4 inches in the even in the alteration area.
I think that's a great idea, Seth. Mark, do you think that's possible, or are there any big trees you're going to need to take out?
If you look at the site plan, the big trees, and honestly, I don't recall if we were going for 4-inch DBH or slightly larger, but the big trees are indicated on the site plan. We survey located all of the sort of substantial trees on the property. There are 2 below the retaining wall that will stay. There's one right up by our proposed pool, which will obviously not stay. Above the retaining wall, I think we're going to get rid of them, but below the retaining wall, inside the 50-foot buffer, the 2 main trees that are down there, we can certainly leave. And we'd be happy to live with the condition, you know, inside the 50-foot buffer to keep any of the 4-inch or greater DBH trees in place.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. How do you feel about that, Seth?
That's good. I mean, I think we can specify native trees if there are previously landscape trees that are non-native species, they could be removed, but any native trees above 4-inch DBH in that area to maintain, I would appreciate that.
That's great. Thank you, Seth. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public on this one?
The land council indicated they have a comment on this. I've been waiting for it to appear, and it hasn't appeared quite yet. So
okay.
Hopefully, maybe if we give RJ a second, it'll get on there.
Yes.
He has commented that it has been addressed. Thank you. So we are comment free at this point. Then.
Perfect. So
That's
Jeff,
okay.
Do we have everything we need to close this one?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Are there any remaining questions from commissioners? It's like no. Mark, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mark. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you, Mark.
You.
And that moves us on to 16 Western Preservation Trust LLC at 16 Western Ave, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you tonight with the second public hearing for, again, residential redevelopment, this time within the buffer zone to a coastal dune out in Surfside. And this is the semi, I guess I would call it, historic structure, which is being renovated and put on a new foundation. I provided revised plans, both architectural and site plan, to you, which removed the full foundation from any areas below the porch within the 50-foot buffer zone, and specifically call for that to be supported on sonotubes. And also, like I say, that's shown on the architecture. We made sure that we revised both the architectural plan as well as the site plan. I believe that was the outstanding concern from the first hearing.
Thank you, Art. I appreciate those plan changes, definitely. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public on this one?
We do not.
Do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, you do.
Art, would you like, Joe, are you making a motion?
Motion to close, sorry. Didn't mean to jump.
Art, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
All right, looks like Joe has the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Hedges LLC at 10 Bassett Road, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you tonight with the first public hearing for landscaping and installation of a pool within an existing yard within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The structural elements would all be outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. The bottom of the structure is above the 2-foot separation to groundwater, and we would maintain a 25-foot undisturbed buffer zone for the project. There's a portion of sort of a meadow with some taller grasses that maybe were annually mowed, I would say, and we would just let that revert. You can see on the plan, we would follow the where the silt fence is for the new point of maintenance. And we haven't requested any waivers for the project. I believe it meets your performance standards and protected interests. I'd be happy to address questions and concerns that you may have.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any questions from the public on this one? It's like, no. Do we have everything we need to close?
Unfortunately, we don't have a DEP file number.
Of course we don't. So commissioners, this is your chance to get out questions because this is going to continue.
I was going to say, if people don't have questions, I'm happy to put together an order for this for next time. I actually had it ready for today in hopes that the number would show up, but it seemed pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think probably drafting an order for next week would be the right course of action here. Or not next week, next meeting. Art, would you like to continue then until January 28th?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this will continue until January 28th.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Nantucket Memorial Airport at 96 and 98 Washington Street, represented by Tori Brown. And then we have Meredith Avery and Nick Darris on for a question.
And I have a presentation. Oh, it is coming up. So my name is Tori Brown. I'm an environmental scientist with VHB. I also have Meredith Avery on the call, the project manager from VHB, Nick Darris, the engineer from Jacobs, and Noah Carberg is on the YouTube stream from the Nantucket Memorial Airport. So going to the next slide, just to give a little overview. There are 22 steel piles currently located within Nantucket Harbor, adjacent to the Great Harbor Yacht Club on Washington Street. The piles were historically used to support a fuel pipe that transported fuel from ferries to the Nantucket Memorial Airport. The fuel pipe is long gone. The piles currently serve no functional purpose. They're a hazard to boaters, and we believe removing them represents an improvement on existing conditions. They are outside rare species habitat, but obviously within the intertidal zone. We sent the NOI to the Department of Marine Fisheries. They sent a response on January 3rd with no recommendations for sequencing, timing, or methods that would avoid or minimize impacts. Going on to the next slide. Just providing kind of an aerial. This is the plan we submitted with the package. Shows the 22 piles as red dots. In terms of methodology, we're proposing to stage a crane on the Great Harbor Yacht Club property. That's you can see it in kind of white. It's a gravel surface. There's on the aerial, you can see there's a boat lift there. We're proposing to stage a crane on that surface with a vibratory attachment. The vibration will break the skin friction bond between the piles and the substrate. We'll remove the piles, temporarily stage them on the Great Harbor Yacht Club property before disposing of them properly. If the crane can't reach any of the piles, they'll be hand cut at the mud line to avoid impacts to salt marsh or the need to stage construction matting on salt marsh. For mitigation, general best management practices, spill response equipment will be kept on site throughout construction. In the case of any incidental releases, absorbent blankets, pads, and secondary containment measures will be used for refueling. On-site personnel will be trained for general spill cleanup. Other than that, any paved surfaces will be swept as necessary. Construction is expected to progress very quickly. We expect it'll take less than a week. And the methods we're proposing will not, are not anticipated to impact salt marsh, land underwater, or any other wetland resources. I do have one more slide at the end, just a few more details, showing a cross section of the existing 22 steel piles. They range from 15 feet in length to 30 feet as you get further away from land, and just a few additional photos. But with that, I guess I'm going to keep it brief and open up to any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Tori. Are there any questions from commissioners or comments? Mark?
I'm a little concerned with cutting off these posts at the mud line. We're having erosion island-wide, and if suddenly these some erosion there, they might suddenly be above the mud line and subject to people stubbing toes or boats running over them. I think we should require that they all be removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I know that was something that concerned me as well, and I wasn't sure like if the damage done by trying to remove them when they were difficult to remove would be worse for the resource area. And I just didn't know if there was some way to like mark them so that if they do come exposed, then you can go back after them? I wasn't sure what the best course of action would be there. So I'm with you, Mark. Mark, you have a follow-up, and then Joe?
Oh, yeah, I mean, they were saying that the crane couldn't reach them. They can get a crane that can reach them. They may not want to pay for it, or they may have to put a crane on the barge. But I think that it's important that they be removed. I think they're a real hazard out there right now, obviously, and they'll be a hazard if we leave off a little underwater.
Thank you, Mark. Joe, you had a comment?
Mark just took my comment. So yeah, I think that the town can get a crane that will work for this area. And even if they have to wait a couple months, I'm fine with it. But I do think that there is something available, and maybe Dave knows of some option that, or crane that is available. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
There isn't one here now, through the chair. I installed those pylons back in the late 80s. So we did install the further ones off a barge and the ones closer to the street from the, at that time was the yacht club shipyard property. But I think I don't think there'll be any trouble getting them out.
Thank you for that perspective, Dave. We're lucky to have your experience on our commission.
Makes
Mark?
me feel old when I see stuff coming out that I put in.
Maybe you did too good a job, David. We'll see if they can get them out.
Well, they're still there, so they served a purpose for a little while.
Definitely. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public? Okay. Do we have everything we need to close this one?
Yes.
Okay. Tori, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Dave, seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal?
I'm happy to close, and the condition should be they be removed. Is that something we can have? Make sure Jeff writes that in.
I think he could condition that, yes.
Aye.
All right, Engelborg?
Aye.
Arisman, aye. LaFleur?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Topham?
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Tori.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to amended orders of conditions. We have New England Development, Lot 5, Mariner Way, represented by Katie Barnacle.
Hi, there we are. Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Katie Barnacle with AECom. I am representing SP Norwell LLC, care of New England Development. And this is for Lot 5 Mariner Way. It has already been constructed, and we're asking for an after the fact, amended order of conditions. That's quite a mouthful. We were in front of you, I believe 2 months ago for Lot 3, right next to this for a similar thing, for a similar amended order of conditions and certificate of compliance. And back when these were approved in 2014, I filed the notices of intents at that time. I thought it was understood that we would have just a standard footprint on the plans of the order of conditions, and then we'd come back in front of the commission with a revised footprint. We did submit revised plans in a letter and included construction information that our order of conditions had been registered, and didn't get a response back and didn't think anything of it. And so we tried to get a certificate of compliance and realized we needed an amended order of conditions. And I do want to apologize to Joe and Jeff for causing any problems with this kind of after the fact thing. It's certainly not something that New England Development wants to be involved in, to, construct a house that's doesn't have the correct permits. And so it was a miscommunication on my part. And we're in front of you again today for the Lot 5 Mariner Way. That's the first, the property kind of on the lower left-hand side. The upper left-hand side is Lot 3 that we were in front of you a couple months ago. So the house has been built, and it was built in 2017, 2018. It is not occupied. We're requesting an amended order of conditions to approve of the footprint that you see here now. So in essence, the as-built is what we're asking for approval for. There is subsurface storm drainage that was part of the planning board review when Mariner Way was being reviewed, that we had to put in storm, I'm sorry, what are they called? Chambers, storm tech chambers. Did I have that right? Storm
Yes.
tech chambers and some leaching pits to take care of any roof runoff. Those have been installed. We submitted a photograph of when they were being installed under the driveway. And we're asking for an amended order of conditions for this property based on the as-built plan.
Thank you, Katie. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? So not to like kind of harp on you, but I do find this development pretty concerning. And I know I was nervous about it the whole permitting process once I got onto the commission, because it's so clearly in the flood zone, you know, and then we were going to have all these like little houses and lots on there. And now it seems like as each lot comes back in front of us, there's much more square footage of building and structure than, you know, we permitted originally. And I feel like this is the exact direction I didn't want this development to go. And then here we are, you know, and even though we have infiltration chambers and those sorts of things, because you're so in the flood zone, they're not going to help a lot of the time, you know, they're going to be underwater. So I just think it's really important with the remaining lots that hopefully you've really stuck to the original designs.
And there's nothing proposed for those 3 lots, and the orders of conditions of those are expiring, I think, today. So if in the future, we'll have to file a brand new notice of intent for the remaining 3 lots. So if that's any help, you know, that we'll have to go through a thorough review of each of the properties and revisit this work in the floodplain.
Thank you. That's helpful information. Jeff, was that what you were going to say, or do you have something else?
Oh, I was just going to say that I think there was just some from all around in the original permitting back in 2014 to that some miscommunication about what happened there, and I think coming back in for the amended order now on these last 2 helps to correct that. But I think with going forward, as long as everybody knows what the expectation is for complete designs and things that are there, and then if there are changes or substantial changes to go through the correct process, I know we communicated kind of back to Katie originally on lot 3 and then on lot 5 that, you know, even there were changes even from the second plan that was sent in to the final plan and things that probably should have come in. So I think that everyone has a pretty clear expectation of what's going forward on that. And I think, you know, Joanne and I talked about this at pretty great length. And I think that a comfort to us is to know that the lots on the other side of the street legitimately expire today. So there's zero chance that anything is going to get constructed on that permit unless they can construct the whole house from scratch in the next like 5.5 hours. So I feel pretty good that will happen. So I think that puts us in a better place.
And we do hear you. And, you know, we took your, the communications from you to heart, and we had a lot of discussions. And, you know, New England Development has always been really good, I think, about being proactive about, you know, contacting the commission and making sure that we're doing the right thing. And so to be in this situation, it's like, not where we want to be. So, you know, apologies, and the other 3 lots will be taken care of in that format. So I hope that's some consolation.
Thank you, Katie.
It's a new year. It's a new year. Let's start off right.
We're trying.
I know.
Yeah, through the chair, Katie, can you estimate how, you know, how much larger is the footprint or the, you know, the additions that were made, you know, without getting full approval?
That's a good question. The initial floor plate was 1,200 square feet with a garage that was probably about 600. So we had about 2,000 square feet. And unfortunately, I don't have the exact number, but I would, just by estimating, maybe a third more. So it's not unsubstantial. It's you know, it's an increase, definitely. Okay.
Jeff?
Yeah, so we kind of figured it out, and I put that together too, and I kind of agree with Katie's numbers that, to be fair, from the second plan that came in 2017 to this one, the difference isn't a huge difference. I know a structure disappeared, and there was some other decking and things that were on there. And I can say that from our field inspection, the structures that are there are all constructed correctly with the proper, flood zone requirements and things that are there. So everything is there. And to be perfectly honest, and I think it was part of what our frustration was a little bit, is I think we felt at a staff level that everything is on the plan, is, kind of within the performance standards and meets the regulatory requirements. Things just got a little out of sequence. So I think that's kind of where we were. And I think some of it changed where it was, 100 square feet of deck, and that turned into enclosed space, and a little bit vice versa from some of the plans, and, with two separate plans that people were working on. And I think a little was lost in translation. So I don't, it's not like we built a house in a wetland or did something, or went from 1,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet. I think it was just a matter of kind of keeping up with the process and keeping everyone informed. And I think that's why we've had both these come back in as amended orders, was to get back to the commission to be sure that everyone understood, in this case, what happened, but then also what the expectation was going forward.
Agreed.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Let's see if there's any. It looks like there's no public comment at this point. So Jeff, do we have everything we need to issue the amended order?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Is there a motion to issue the amended order? Motion made by Dave, seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal?
A reluctant aye.
Engelborg?
Aye.
Arisman, aye. LaFleur?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Topham? Aye. All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Katie.
Great, thank you. And we'll see you in a better situation next time.
Yes,
Thanks.
definitely. All right, so that moves us on to 56 Monomoy Nominee Trust at 56 Monomoy Road, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. For the record, on behalf of the property owner 56 Monomoy Nominee Trust, Paul Santos from Nantucket Surveyors. This is an amended order of conditions request for a order that was issued by the commission in November of 2020, at which time we sought approval for some building additions and renovations to an existing driveway with grading and landscaping and utilities within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and a policy coastal bank. The regulatory setbacks, the 25, the 50, and the 100, are more restrictive from the policy coastal bank than they are from the vegetated wetland. And then hence those are the lines that are on the plan. The lot is completely developed, essentially within areas that could be presently developed. It sits elevated on the landform. The site itself is up around elevation 24, with the vegetated wetland component down around elevation 7. So a difference of about 16 or 17 feet in elevation difference between the vegetated wetland and the developed portion of the lot. The FEMA flood zone, which is in fact the policy coastal bank limit, also is at elevation 8. So within this amended order, what we're asking to do is within the developed lawn area on the backside of the existing structure, we're seeking permission to construct a pool, spa, deck, and hardscaping with associated grading and landscaping within the buffer zone to both the bordering vegetated wetland and the policy coastal bank. There'll be no changes to the grade on the backside of the existing property. The component itself, the landform in the coastal bank in this area is completely vegetated, very heavily vegetated actually. And there is a small walking path that leads from the elevated lawn area down to the coastal beach. Again, 56 Monomoy Road, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. All the work occurs outside of the 50-foot no build, and there is no need for any type of waivers with respect to groundwater and the placement of the pool. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions from commissioners? So Paul, I just had one for you, and then Maureen, I'll go to you. In addition to the pool and those structural elements, it looks like you're also shifting the beach path to the other side of the property, and then it's like traversing the entire length.
Yeah, I actually didn't even include that in my application. I know it's on the landscape plan, so I would say that's not before you at this, under this application. I didn't ask for the beach path, and I'm not sure why. Again, I did notice that after the fact, but I'll have to follow up with the landscapers. If that's something that they do want to pursue, I'd have to come back with another, either amended order or a minor mod, but that is not part of this application, Ashley. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, because there is the existing path is already there. I mean, you already have a path with the steps. So I'm not sure what the intent was to move the beach path.
Okay, so Jeff, can we put that somewhere in the amended order that there's to be no changing of that beach path? Because landscapers love to just do their own thing, unfortunately.
So I think on that, you would have an additional finding just in the regular finding section that says something like the commission finds that the beach path as shown on the landscape plan is not approved by this amended order of conditions.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Maureen, you had a question or comment?
Oh, maybe it's a little snarky, but a 60-foot long pool, do they have Olympic swimmers? I mean, I was just stunned by the size of it. That was really all. I know we can't do anything about that, but good Lord, that was really stunning. So, that's all, just a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. Mark?
Yes, through the chair, Paul, I in terms of a 60-foot pool, which is fine. I mean, it's a good lap pool for sure.
Yeah.
I hope you won't come back in a month or two and say, now with the pool where it is, we can't have the path where it is. We must be moved because it's a hardship for the people to walk all the way around. So I think that you should make the owners aware that that may be a difficult application to come back with a moving the walkway just because it doesn't work so well with a 60-foot pool.
Duly noted. Okay. I will say the pool is only 10 feet wide too, so it's clearly just a lap pool.
Yeah. They can jump across, Paul.
Yes, so yeah, I never really even paid much attention to it, but yeah, 10 foot wide.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public on this one?
We do. We have a couple. I know the Land Council has said they have a comment and haven't got it entered yet, but we also have a comment from a direct abutter, Mary Randolph, and I apologize if I say your last name incorrectly, but Mary Randolph Ballinger. And she says she's concerned about the pool installation and the impact on the wetlands and the salt marsh, specifically the drainage when being emptied. Will that affect the west and north hill and wetlands? Most of that property and house is on fill. Where will the pool equipment be put? I would like to be a welcoming neighbor. So I think she just has some of the normal concerns that I know the commission has with pools as well. So, oh, a little bit more, but this is going to be negatively affect my property. I would hope that the patio could be pushed inward and trees put between our properties. Sorry, that appeared just as I finished. So
Thank you, Jeff. Paul, did you hear those comments?
Yes. Mrs. Ballinger is actually the property to the east. And when you're looking at the plan, she's quite a bit lower, obviously, than this property. I'd say we're probably, as I said, we're up at around elevation 24. If I had to estimate, she's probably down around 10 or so. So she's on the low side of the property. I'm happy to reach out to her with regard to any type of buffering and I can connect them with the team that's doing the landscape for this project.
Thank you, Paul. I'm sure that would be appreciated. Jeff and then Mark.
sorry, I just want to add in, this may affect Mark's comment. So RJ from the Nantucket Land Council also commented, we have concerns about a pool and associated spa of this volume being installed this close to the resource areas. Will this be conditioned similar to other pools required to use a pump out service?
I would assume yes, that we would be doing pump out and the newer pool conditions where they have to list the pool operator, on a yearly basis to turn in their records would be my assumption. Any other, Mark?
Yeah, that's where I was going, Madam Chair, is given the elevation of the pool and the surrounding areas, I think a pump out requirement would be in order.
Yes, thank you. I think we almost need those for all pools regardless at this point. Joe and Jeff? And what? Oh, and lighting. Jeff?
So if it helps for discussion, I can read through the conditions that we typically put on pools and that we had put on this one for the amended order, if that would be helpful for people to hear. And you can make any changes if necessary.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for us and for the public to have that refresher.
Sure. So just to be clear on this order, I added that finding that the commission finds that the beach path as shown on the amended plan of record is not approved by this amendment, just to clear that up. And then the specific conditions to the pool is I have it, the pool should not be drained or discharged in, the pool and spa shall not be drained or discharged into an area within the jurisdiction of the commission. All drainage shall be removed from the site. That's clear. And then 2, the pool shall not be chemically treated between November 1st and May 1st. All chemical treatment shall stop 3 weeks prior to any draining or discharging of the pool. All lighting shall be directed downwards and away from the resource area. And then the newest one, the applicant shall provide the contact information for the company maintaining the pool. The pool company shall provide 48-hour notice of any draining to the commission with a plan showing where the pool shall be drained to. So in this case, it would simply be, providing the information for who's coming with the truck to take any water out of that pool, and not necessarily a plan where it's going to go, but more of a, Visco is coming to pump the pool, or Hughes, or whoever's going to come to it. Not that they have to use those two, but just the two that came to it.
They have options. Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Just look to make sure our public seems good. So Jeff, then, do we have everything to issue the amended order?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to issue the amended order? Motion made by Maureen. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrison, aye, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Popham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to D&B Realty Trust at 11A Meadow Lane, also represented by Paul Santos.
Okay. Thank you again. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the 11A Meadow Lane property owner, D&B Realty Trust. Again, this is an amended order of conditions. We are amending an order that the commission issued in May of 2020 for the construction of a structure, pool, hardscaping, retaining wall with associated grading, landscaping, and utilities within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. In this case, the bordering vegetated wetland is essentially a drainage ditch that runs along the rear property line of the Meadow Lane lot. Essentially, it's a cut ditch along the backside, and that is the wetland line that's demarcated on the plan. Within this application, we are seeking to remove what was a guest house envelope, which was located adjacent or to the rear of the lot. That guest house is no longer going to get constructed. It's revised and moved further towards Meadow Lane, and it's becoming just simply a pool house. There's a small shed or type of garage that's associated with that pool house area. The pool itself is moved slightly away from the regulated or wetland area, and the house configuration is just changed with regard to square footage. The house itself is actually outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. So the areas that are within the 100-foot buffer zone are the pool house, and the shed / garage structure. It is an amended order of conditions. Again, no waivers are necessary. The site, the pool itself is elevated in an area on the site where we'll be able to maintain a 2-foot groundwater separation. This is similar to the lot that we did next door, in which we did the same elevation with regard to the pool, and we were able to maintain that 2-foot groundwater separation. The pool house and garage itself are slab or on slab foundations. So again, no foundations, therefore no need or no concern with groundwater separation to the foundation structure. And that would include even with the slab, the 4-foot wall, and the appropriate footing. So it's essentially the same application that you had previously, albeit it's just a completely different layout based on a current lot owner who's looking to develop the property. Again, and it's an amended order with no waivers. The original order did carry with it all the standard pool criteria, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Paul. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, Seth. Go for it. I'm thinking the same thing.
I'll say it or you can say it, but I'm already talking. So I have significant concerns with the planting regime that's being outlined on the planting plan. Under the original order of conditions, there is a condition that was recorded requiring all plants in the commission's jurisdiction to be native and no cultivars. And of my accounting of the list of plants represented on the plan, every single one of them is non-native and a cultivar. And there are some plants that I would strongly hope never get planted anywhere on Nantucket, especially Miscanthus sinensis and Pennisetum alopecuroides. Those two plants are not currently classified as invasive in Massachusetts, but are classified as invasive in other states, and likely in some point in the future will be going under consideration by MyPAG for potentially listing as an invasive species. I know some of these plantings happen outside of our jurisdiction. Some of them are within our jurisdiction. I think we need a completely redesigned landscape planting plan to show native species at least within our jurisdiction. And I would request that the species that I mentioned before outside of our jurisdiction are not planted on the site as well. Regulatorily, I know we don't have any sticking power there, but I really don't, nobody wants to see those species on Nantucket. They're known to escape to minimally managed areas and cause problems for your neighbors and conservation organizations. So I think we really need to to have a revised planting plan here.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. I was as well very concerned with the planting plan and also took note of the ornamental pear, I believe it was on there, because they are extremely well adept at escaping the landscaped areas and going into wild areas. So I would hope that that would be removed from the list as well. Mark?
Yes, thank you. Actually, is there a common name for those two plants you mentioned, Seth? I don't speak Latin that well.
Sorry, it's fountain grass, and it's listed as something different on this plan, but Miscanthus sinensis is generally referred to as Chinese silvergrass or Oriental silvergrass. I think they're listing it on this plan as dwarf dagio grass. I've never heard that one, but that's the problem with common names.
Yeah, that's
looking
a cultivar of Miscanthus.
Looking through the list, this list really makes me sad. It's basically a list of all the plants that are known to cause problems or have some easily replaceable native species that would fulfill the same benefit. Like, for instance, they have Rose of Sharon here. They could plant swamp rosemel, which is a native hibiscus that has a very similar look to it and similar use. There's a viburnum on here. They could plant the native viburnum. This is just a list that it really discomforts me. It makes me sad to see something like this. So I know we have limited scope as to what we can do within our jurisdiction, but I hate to see this list.
Paul, do you think that it would be possible to come back to us with a revised plant list?
Yes, if that's what the commission feels comfortable in doing. I will say, for the most part, the commission's jurisdiction, I think, is probably from the back end of the pool towards the wetland area. But I mean, your points are duly noted. I mean, we want to get you something that's comfortable, that everyone's comfortable with. We meet again, I'm assuming, rather than try to close this, you'd like to bring the plant list back as a submittal prior to the next meeting. Is that what I'm getting a sense that you would like to do?
I think that would be best if it's possible. Our next meeting is January 28th.
Yeah, that's only a few weeks, and I think that's a reasonable ask. And like I said, we'll let the landscape designer and the appropriate parties watch this tape, and hopefully we'll come up with something that you feel more comfortable with when we come back.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I know we appreciate it, and Nantucket's native species appreciate it too.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And like I said, we'll get and we'll look at the entire site as opposed to just what's in jurisdiction. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Thank you.
Real quickly, I was just going to add. 1 second. I'm just muting Joanne so I don't echo through the computer. I was just going to say, Paul, if it would be helpful, we do have a digital copy of the pamphlet, The Planting with Nantucket, in my pamphlet. I know I just totally butchered the title of what it's called. That we'd be happy to pass along to the landscape architect and review a list in advance based on those comments before you get it to the commission too.
Great, we appreciate it.
Great, perfect. So that moves us on in the public meeting to request for determination. We have Paul Gagliano. I know I butchered that. I apologize. At 59 Pulpus Road, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with an application for residential development within the 100-foot buffer zone to an isolated vegetated boundary wetland. And there is a proposed pool and a portion of a structure within the 100-foot buffer zone. All structural elements are outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. And then we've actually maintained a 38-foot no disturb buffer instead of the 25, so that we could also be sure to meet the greater than 50% of the 25 to the 50-foot buffer zone as undisturbed. So showing the silt fence along there. The bottom of the structure is structures are greater than 2 feet to groundwater. I believe you've got a small perched wetland there. You can see the grade change from the spot elevations of about 9-10 feet. I did a deep auger hole there at the location of the proposed pool and did not hit any groundwater. And so with that, that's essentially the extent of the project. This house will be served by town sewer as well. And I'd be happy to address questions or concerns that you might have.
Thank you, Art.
If I could just add, and based on the last discussion, though it is an RDA, I would understand the same sort of pool conditions, if that would help, could be imposed or agreed upon.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Joe?
Yeah, I just with the vernal pool adjacent to this property, I really have a problem with some of the developments going on here. I'm worried about, just how much grading is going to be done. There's no pool surface, no patio plan. It's kind of minimal. And I'm also worried about the native trees that are there now that it would provide habitat for this area. So I have a little bit of a problem with this. And I've worked in the neighborhood, so I do know this vernal pool pretty well. And I just think they're so fragile in Nantucket. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? So this might be a question for Jeff. So Jeff, is it because most of the structures or all of the structures are outside of the 50 that this is coming in as an RDA and not like a regular permit?
So, as an applicant, you have the choice between the two applications for things that are buffer zone activities only. So when you do issue out something with like a -3, is you're essentially making a determination that the activities are not going to alter the resource areas, and then allowing the work to go forward without a notice of intent. So you can choose to go either way. Most people do. I usually try to steer people towards notices of intent that contact us, just for the ability that they can be amended and modified. RDAs are stuck. When they're done, they're done. That's what much you've permitted. There's no other work allowed other than what's really shown on the plan. So for what it's worth, that's really the big difference. They're both appealable. So there's that. So it's kind of the differences, but you do have the ability as well. You can impose conditions under an RDA as well. So
okay, that's good to know, because I think in addition to pool conditions, we'd probably want that 38 feet to be demarcated with a fence or boulders or something to ensure that stays in perpetuity. Art?
Yes, if I could just respond, the basis or the reasoning that I thought for an RDA on this is because of having such a large, completely undisturbed buffer zone of the full 38 feet, in addition to it being essentially a small isolated wetland. It was delineated by Brian Madden of LEC. I don't believe that it's a vernal pool. It's just an isolated wetland. So there's a pretty significant difference there. I don't think that in any way negates the requirement to be sure there's not an adverse impact or effect to this, but that by providing that the larger buffer zone, we would certainly accept a condition of say maybe posts every 20 feet or something along those lines for a no disturb zone, or a split rail if you felt better about that, though I trying to balance whether you actually want that much of a structure sort of along there. But certainly the that is a limit of all activity on the site.
Thank
And
you.
the RDA on the basis of as well, that meeting all the requirements for no waivers being required from the regulations.
Thank you for explaining that. Joe?
So my understanding, working in the neighborhood, that was a vernal pool. So can we get that assessed by someone just to double check?
Jeff, do you have any knowledge of that, or what would we normally do in this situation?
Sure. So it's not, as far as we've found, not a certified vernal pool that's gone through that process. There's a process to identify whether it's a vernal pool or not. Some of it relates to, obligate species for a vernal pool. I think the most classic example is something like fairy shrimp. Obviously, anything that holds water, that it can't have fish. Obviously, I don't believe this wetland holds fish. And then there's a little bit of seasonality to water within that resource area to qualify as well. Excuse me. I know on our site inspection in the last week that it's currently holding water as well during the winter months. It's not something that you always see indicative of vernal pools, and then going from there. So you could certainly try to find obligate species in there. This is not necessarily the best time of year to be looking for those guys because they're usually dormant, but there is a process to do that. But I'm not aware that it's been certified. We certainly look at that a lot of times, but I didn't see that in the records.
Thank you, Jeff, for that background. Joe, would you like to pursue looking into that any further?
No, I would. I just, that's what I was told. I don't know, whatever, 5-6 years ago, I was working in the neighborhood. So I'd rather be confident and know exactly what we're dealing with. So it was by one surveyor describes a vernal pool, then I think we just need to double check before we go too far with this.
I'll get to Christine's notes.
Okay. Are there any other kind of questions or comments from commissioners so we can get them all out and then figure out what to do with this one? Looks like no. Jeff?
We do have a couple of public comments if you guys would like to hear them as well.
Yeah, let's take those.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just trying to bring the one up on my computer. So RJ Turcott of the Nantucket Land Council, he did say he shares Commissioner Topham's concerns, and then the abutter to, I guess, what would be the southeast, Christina Jellamy, sent in a comment in writing earlier, and she said, "Dear Commission, I would like to express my concern regarding the application at 59R Pulpus Road. This property abuts my property at 9 Kelly Road with a wetland in between. This wetland is a vernal pool that ebbs and flows in depthness and is a critical part of the ecosystem in this area. The 59R Pulpus Road property slopes down into the wetland, causing any hardscape to run into the vernal pool. All the neighbors close to this area have water issues in our basements, and any changes or disruption to this wetland will not affect only the vernal pool itself, but the properties around it. Please consider preserving as much of the natural habitat around this area as possible. This wetland is also home to ducks, turtles, and frogs throughout the season. Your consideration is greatly appreciated."
Thank you for reading those, Jeff. All right, Commission. So what do we feel comfortable doing? I know Joe wants more information. I personally might feel more comfortable if this was a true notice of intent. But maybe that's just me. How is everybody else feeling, or what's your perspective? Or is there a motion to issue? Maureen?
I mean, I just have a question in terms of what Joe was saying, and also what the butter was saying. What I guess I'm trying to think about how, in terms of getting this either more clearly delineated. I mean, I think there's just a lack of clarity, at least, and is there a way to condition that, or what makes sense to do? I mean, I mean, vernal pools are so important, and especially on Nantucket. So I certainly don't want to have anything that's going to have an impact on one. And I'm sorry, I don't know enough other than to hear that other people are concerned. So it seems like not something to push through without maybe further information. Although I have to say, I don't know what that would be. So that was just a general, it sounds like we should look into this further, but I couldn't tell you exactly how. Thank you.
When was this wetland delineated? I'm sorry if we already said that and I've forgotten already.
Give me one second. I included the data forms November 13th of 2019.
Okay, so recently. Seth, you had a comment or question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just double checked the Massachusetts certified vernal pool records, and this is not a certified vernal pool. It does not mean that it isn't necessarily, it could be still a vernal pool, but potential vernal pools and certified vernal pools have very different classifications to them. In order to get this pool certified, you have to have a licensed person go and check for the species that are required and hydrological requirements as well. And this is the absolute worst time of the year to do that certification process. The best time of the year is several months away from now, which would be in the spring. And I don't think we have the opportunity to really wait on this one. I share Commissioner Topham's concerns. I think there are a lot of areas on the island that have potential vernal pools that haven't been certified. I know the last effort to really go and certify vernal pools was sort of spearheaded by the Land Council, I believe, in the early 2000s. They got a lot of them certified. There might be others out there, but I think that without that certification, what we have is an isolated vegetated wetland, unfortunately. So I don't see any problem with this going forward. I think that in our regulations update, we can maybe think about areas that are potential vernal pools requiring applicants to go through the certification process to see if they're actually meeting that criteria. But right now, our regulations don't really protect that potential vernal pool. It only protects really certified pools.
Thank you, Seth. Jeff?
Yeah, one of the other tricky parts on an application like this when we are reviewing it too is most of the resource area is not located on the locus in question. So there are also ramifications of attempting to certify a vernal pool on property that you don't own. That if I were a property owner, I would personally I don't think that would go very well if you were in a butter and tried to certify a vernal pool on your butter's property. I think that would have some action. So I think that's kind of interesting part of this. I know in our review, I mean, I think we felt confident in the actual boundary location for where it was based upon the hydric soils and the vegetation. And like I said, again, we've seen standing water in there as recently as, I was just on the site again, I think 2 days ago. Sorry, lost track of the days. I was on there on Tuesday and there was still water at that location. And I know we've documented, and I think the abutters comments where there were ducks and other things too. So there's clearly a good amount of water that's there. So I'm not saying that it's not a vernal pool, or it is. I mean, I would love to look into all these little standing water bodies for a lot of sites, but I tend to agree with Seth that, you know, we're months away from being able to really get to the obligate species that are really needed to really properly assess that.
Thank you, Jeff. Art, were you trying to make a comment? I couldn't tell if your hand just went up.
Yes, but I don't want to interrupt commissioner discussion. At whatever point, I certainly would like to respond.
Okay, it looks like Joe had a question, and then I'll go back to you.
Well, it's kind of sad that we can't properly protect a wetland because of the time of season. If it's, you know, what happens if 2 to 3 months down the road, we say Christina Jelemy, who wrote the abutter, wants to have someone certify it, then what happens? Are we just too bad, so sad, like it is what it is? Or I'm kind of lost at what we do. Is it the cart before the horse, or we can't do anything because of the time of season? It seems a little, yeah, I just don't know where we're gonna go from here. It's kind of a tough, sticky situation, I guess. I don't know if anyone else can help me on that, because I'm kind of seeing like we're gonna let something go because we can't certify it because of the time of season, and it is what it is. And I don't think that that's kind of part of our charter. We should be saying like, all right, well, let's protect this, and, you know, let's find out the information before we can make a decision. That's kind of where I'm at. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Mark?
What are the implications if we oppose this application, or this request rather? What happens?
That's a good question for Jeff. I mean, I guess they could appeal, or they'll come back in with a different application or a notice of intent. You know, if Christina Jelemy wanted to certify her vernal pool, I think she should start getting the paperwork to do that. But whatever permits get issued around her property in the meantime would be grandfathered. So,
Can Jeff help us with that?
Jeff, do you have any answers if this RDA doesn't go through?
So, yeah, I mean, it depends what the finding of the commission is. So when you issue the RDA, right, you are issuing a decision where you would either be saying that the work as proposed, you know, will not fill, alter, and I apologize for remembering the resource area or the buffer zone, and doesn't require the notice of intent, or you say that you would require the notice of intent. Those are the kind of two resultants of the RDA in this case. Is you would say that the work can go forward without the notice, or that it requires a notice of intent. But I would definitely, I'm sure Art would like to have some comment on behalf of his applicant before you put out that path either way.
Mark, did that answer your question? And then I'll give it over to Art.
Well, my question might be to the other commissioners is how do we feel about having them file a notice of intent rather than an RDA?
I mean, I think given what I've seen, I would prefer a notice in this case. I think primarily because there's a pool that's the closest item to the wetland. It's always a little bit more concerning for me. And we're not completely out of the buffer zone. I think a lot of RDAs that come in with potential construction, for me, it's like all outside the 100. You know, it tends to be further than this one from our jurisdiction. But again, that's just me. But I would like to give Art the opportunity to respond and give his opinion here.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll just work backwards. I mean, you've got 4 more RDAs after this one. And I think that I understand, I hear your point on the pool, but in terms of RDAs for work between the 50 and the 100, that I think they're fairly routine, and that this really isn't that uncommon. And then again, the expanded buffer. I'd like to take a few minutes on the vernal pool, because I don't believe this was a vernal pool. And I think that just because certain people may use that nomenclature doesn't make it so. And if it was okay with you, I have open on my other screen the GIS aerial with the wetlands layers turned on, and I could certainly share that with you. And then if it would help for the record, to screenshot it and send it in. But I think it would help form this discussion in terms of looking at what this overall area looks like with the wetland resource area. As Jeff stated, it's only a corner of a much larger wetland that is actually onto locus. And so with your permission, I would show that.
Yes, go ahead, Art, and share your screen.
So highlighted in blue is Locust 59 Pulpus Road, which has been subdivided. And the 59B is where we're working on, and the wetland is here in the corner of 59. And then in green is what is shown as by the GIS mapped wetlands. So you would have, we only delineated what we had permission to do on our own property, which then we're into the buffer zone of. This is Christina Jellamy's property here, which, as you could see, is essentially mowed right to the wetland. And then the whole other area is over here. So we're going even further with protection, and the proposed development is up in this area, leaving a large buffer zone in here. So I just was hoping that sort of showing you this overall area, how wet this is, in terms of, typically the conditions. I'll stop sharing if that's okay.
Yeah.
So you can go back to the discussion. And so, the vernal pools have to dry out for a certain part of the season, typically. And, this is a much, much larger system. And and Brian, who, does these delineations, and typically if there was something like that, I think that's a concern. Certainly he would have, noted in the field data forms, and his, we had, this professionally done in terms of delineating the resource area. In terms of comments of not protecting with this application, the wetland resource area, again, I don't think that that's true. I think that we absolutely are meeting the standards by the increased buffer zone, and willing to accept, and not having anything that requires a waiver, and willing to accept conditions related to the demarcation as well as the standard pool conditions.
Thank you, Art. Does that kind of help anybody, or are we still firm in
Like
our perspectives?
I'd like to see a notice
Okay.
personally.
So Jeff, in that case, we would require a notice, is how we would do this.
A second, let me get up the correct one, because there's a specific, like normally when we do like -3s and +2s, there's one that's specific determination. I just need to get it in front of me if that's what people are looking to do. So if you were looking to go down that path, I think you would make the determination for a +4, and that reads: the work described on reference plan and document is within the buffer zone and will alter an area subject to protection under the Act. Therefore, said work requires the filing of a notice of intent or ANRAD simplified review if work is limited to the buffer zone. And then I think you would also then want to issue a +5 that the area and or work described on the reference plans and documents is subject to review and approval by, and then it would be the Nantucket, it's the municipality pursuant to the municipal wetland ordinance or bylaw, and that'd just be the code of the town of Nantucket, chapter 136, for that citation there.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there any further discussion or questions people want to have, or are we ready to make a motion? Take
Ready.
that as ready. So is someone ready to make the motion to issue a +4 requiring a notice, and then a +5 saying that this is subject to review under our bylaw?
So moved.
Motion made by Joe. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. And that moves us on to Coleman P. Burke at 37 Gardner Road, also represented by Art Gasparo.
Madam Chair, I'm going to have to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed project before you is for a sewer connection to the newly installed force main in Chimo. And that's the extent of the project, is to remove, abandon septic system, put in a grinder pump assembly, and connect to the lateral that was left by the town. And the work was all essentially going to occur within an existing driveway outside of the 25-foot buffer zone. So we would install a silt fence along the edge of the driveway. It's essentially the trenching itself for the pipe is done by a small machine, typically about 4 feet deep, and install the pipe and backfill it. So it's sort of a one day. It's not a lot of large stockpiling of material or anything like that. And then the slightly more significant portion would be essentially we would be removing up in the larger portion of the driveway, much further from the wetland, greater than 50 feet. Pull out the existing septic tank, and then in that same hole put back a grinder pump basin, if you will, and the assembly for that. And that's the project, which I believe is a significant net benefit to the protected interests, as the existing septic system is completely within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Thank you, Art. Any questions or comments? It's like, no. Jeff, what would staff recommend here?
Staff would recommend the -3, allowing for the work without the notice of intent.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Is there a motion to issue a -3?
So moved.
Motion made by Seth. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Sorry. Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Right, so that carries with Commissioner Topham recused. Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
And this moves us on to Forshunga's Group. I'm sure I butchered that one too. LLC at 4 Pocomo Road, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good evening. Once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 4 Pocomo. What you have before you this evening is hopefully extremely simple. We have an existing wetland that is located on the other side of the existing driveway. We have an existing septic system with a leach field outside the 100-foot buffer. We are proposing to install a Septitech tank in line with the other tanks in the system outside the 50-foot buffer within existing lawn. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, does staff have a recommendation on this one?
Yes, we had also reviewed the boundaries at their request on this one, so we're recommending the positive 2A to confirm the resource area boundaries and the negative 3 allowing the work without a notice.
Great, thank you, Jeff. So is there a motion to issue a positive 2A and a negative 3? Oh, Mark, you have-
Also move.
okay, motion made by Mark. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
That's all.
Thank you.
Mark. My computer's getting a little laggy, so I hope I don't lose you guys here. We're moving on to Thomas Larrabee at 101 Hummock Pond Road and 5 Millbrook Road. And we have Nicholas and Thomas Larrabee on the call for this one.
Hi, we were asked to put in a request for determination of applicability for determining where we can and cannot put our crop fields. We are developing a diversified farm. It's been hayed for the past 50 plus years. So we aren't quite sure where we are allowed to put these fields and not. The indicated wetlands are only wet for a portion of the year. So we're just not quite sure what we're supposed to do here.
Well, hopefully we can help you out with that.
Yep, that's all right.
Jeff, it looks like has a comment, and then I know I have a few questions about this one. We can probably stop screen sharing for now, and we might have to pull it back up.
All right.
Jeff, do you have something to add?
I think I'll wait till you ask your questions, because then I may be answering a couple of those too, because I know this is kind of our first opportunity to deal with an agricultural property like this. So why don't we get all the questions out, and then between the Larrabees and I, we can try to knock them all out.
Okay. So I know I go past this property like all the time for one of my walks. So when it transferred to land bank, I was happy, but then nervous that there was going to be agriculture too close to some of these wetlands. And I do worry, like the ones I see a lot are right on Millbrook Road. There's one that these might be vernal pools, at least some of them, given the timing of year. And I don't know if they're certified yet, but we should probably have that sort of look. And then, Jeff, this is a question for you, just because I know agriculture does have slightly different rules, but what are our buffer zones for agriculture? Are they the same, or are they a little bit different?
Yes, is the easy answer to that. So agriculture is a little bit funky under the act and under the bylaw. So, excuse me again, is when we look at agriculture, agriculture is allowed to do a certain number of activities that are considered to be, normal maintenance and use that are associated with agriculture. And there's a pretty lengthy list that I'll spare everyone me like reading out loud for this, but a lot of it relates to, crop production, potential, like livestock grazing, other uses that are associated directly with the farm, including, drainage structures, water movement. All those things are kind of covered in there that are exempted out of the Wetlands Protection Act. The one things that they do require, and I know we've talked to the Larrabees about this too, and I know they've been working very hard with USDA on putting together kind of a plan for the farm, is what the plan is and what the uses are and defining those uses. And I know when we kind of started down the path with them here, one of the first steps for us, and remember that some of this started with an enforcement for a structure moving that, unbeknownst to them, they thought was covered, and it wasn't. It was an honest mistake. I don't think anyone was doing anything wrong or malicious. It was just we've been working the property for 50 years. This is just what we do. Getting that delineation to know where the buffer zones fall and where the actual resource areas fall, because some of that regular maintenance activity that can go on depends upon whether you're in resource area or buffer zone. So, unfortunately, it'll probably be a little bit of a sift between us at a staff level and the Larrabees for activities and locations. But I think getting the delineation set to know where that's going to be for sure is kind of that critical first step. And that's, I think that's important that that's been had. And I think identifying those wetland resource areas are important. I tend to agree that over time, maybe looking at some of the wetlands more specifically, if there are concerns about vernal pools, is very doable, and that agriculture and things can be planned around some of those areas for what they're doing, and some of those areas have been in other use as well. So, I guess I would just ask them where they are as far as putting together kind of the overall, operational plan for the farm and kind of the guidance they've gotten from the USDA. I'll speak from our end in saying I think we're comfortable with the boundaries of the vegetated wetland shown as far as transitioning from vegetated wetland to upland. But I think a little bit more information from them in regards to that, I think it would be at least useful for me to know what information we need to get back to them.
That's coming, right?
We're continuously working with NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service of Massachusetts. They are helping us put together a conservation plan and proper farm plan. It's a slow process. This year has been difficult. But everything goes over the land bank's desk before we are allowed to act on anything. We're just trying to avoid any possible violations. And that's why we are talking to you today, to just kind of get some guidance and understand where we can and can't do things. We have a baseline idea of what we are going to do at the farm. We're looking to have diversified vegetables, fruits, some grazing land for some animals. But we can't really finalize things until we know where we can put things on the property. So whether we can enter these, what were determined wetland areas, and either have it as grazing areas or put crops there, will help us finalize a real farm plan for this property.
Thank you. That's, good information. I know what would be helpful for me, because I think you had 3 different plan views that were different. If you could overlay the plan view that had the wetlands delineated with the plan that you had your possible grazing lines, because then we could see, where they're possibly going to intersect, or where you would potentially need to maybe, move fields to avoid wetland areas, I think would be helpful, visually, for me to see what's going on. I don't know if any other commissioners have any thoughts. Doesn't look like it. So, Jeff, is this something that would end up getting held over because we don't necessarily have an overlay of what they want to do with the wetlands?
So it's a little bit tricky. So I think what we're trying to do is, hopefully I'm not on mute still. Sorry, I just switched my screen to look at something else. With agriculture in this sense, I think what we're looking to do is approve the actual wetland boundaries, and then they can take those wetland boundaries to go form their final plan for approval. So the agriculture that's there, that's taking place, is allowed to continue under the regular operation and maintenance of the farm that's there. I'm trying to pull up the specific provision of the state act. Sorry about that. There's just a lot of stuff that's in there. So just to kind of go through is when they have the certified farm conservation plan that they've been working on with NRCS is what kind of gives them the ability to do all of the activities related to agriculture and exempt it out. I think what we're trying to get back to the Larrabees is these are where the wetland areas are. When you put together your plan that they finish up, that will be the key to those activities, because the activities that they listed are generally exempt through the normal operation and maintenance of agriculture. And I know this is what's kind of funky about this one is, I think our staff recommendation on this kind of RDA would obviously be that positive 2A, and then one that I don't think anyone on the sitting commission has run into, because it's been a while since we've seen it, is there is a, sorry, my computer is also going slow, a specific determination number. Sorry, I'm trying to load it up again. That you'd be looking at. There's a -5, right? That's the area described in the request is subject to protection under the Act. Since the work described therein meets the requirements for the following exemption, as specified in the Act and the regulation, no notice of intent is required. And you would reference out specifically the portion of the Wetlands Protection Act related to agriculture, and then the specific section of the Town of Nantucket bylaw that also exempts out the normal operation and maintenance of agriculture. So anything outside those provisions would still require a filing later in time, but I think that would come after they finish with NRCS in developing their farm conservation plan. I know this is like the most clear as mud kind of process, and it's a real pain for everybody, probably especially the Larrabees, but I think they're stepping through it in a really smart way to get that wetland delineation to then fuel the final plan, be able to use the exemptions under the Act to kind of bridge the gap for what they would be doing for agriculture. And then once that final plan is done and gets sent to the commission as well, there's a little bit more review related to the specific activities that are going to be taking place.
Perfect.
That's helpful. I think I am still a little confused, but that's all right. I get worried because so many wetlands historically have been damaged by agriculture, and then agriculture continues to have these exemptions. And it's not, nothing against the Larrabees, but I just worry about increased agricultural use on this property, because it has just kind of been a mowing the hay sort of property, and that animal grazing and some of those activities might be more impactful, but I guess that's later down in the process that we would look at that.
Yeah, and I think too, I know we don't happen very often. I actually spoke to a colleague in Western Mass about this after this kind of all went down, because on Nantucket we really only have, again, 4 properties where this can even really apply to. Bartlett's is one, and their plans are literally older than time itself, I feel like sometimes, because they've been around for so long. Moore's End is one, and there's not really a jurisdictional area. Pumpkin Pond is another one that kind of backs up to this and now this property. So it's not something that we see a lot or have through. So unfortunately, the Larrabees are kind of the guinea pig for everybody right now. So I think waiting for that conservation plan and having them stay there, and I think giving them the guidance that you're, hopeful to see the wetland resource areas specifically be, protected to the maximum extent possible, or the uses selected for those areas to be as minimally damaging to those areas or minimally involving those areas. I think it's important for them to hear if that's kind of the will of the commission. And then when they put together that plan with approved delineation, they can kind of tailor make to say, well, we don't want to put animals in those areas for a lot of different reasons, or, we're selecting to put things there, or we're choosing crops that are, more suited to those areas that, don't involve machinery or handwork. But I think them knowing that and knowing that that is something that the commission is seeking, I think is really useful guidance for them. I don't want to speak for them, but that would seem to make sense to me.
It's exactly what we're looking for. That you hit the nail on the head. This is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to move forward in the most responsible way, and this was our first step.
Yeah. We appreciate you guys coming here.
And please keep in mind with this too, it's not necessarily related directly to this process. Is the land is held by the land bank, and the land bank is also providing another, kind of another eye and lens to this to keep in fitting with the Land Bank Act. So there's another, conservation-minded organization also kind of looking at the activities to make sure that it's appropriate for the use on that land as well. So there's a lot of competing interests that are kind of similar, that everyone's trying to work around it and, and be the best possible stewards, I think, for the property here. So it's kind of an interesting case.
Our agreement with the land bank is that it's reviewed annually. Our farm plan would be reviewed annually anyways before anything would be planted.
Oh, perfect. That's great to know. Seth, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I think this is a good step in trying to get the wetlands delineated, and I don't see any issue with the, direct agricultural activities as being exempt in the Wetlands Protection Act and the Nantucket regulations in terms of the crops and the grazing. But on the plan, there are listed some things that I'm wondering if require additional review. For instance, there's a residential use area, agricultural support facilities, and proposed farm stand. And those sound like structural buildings to me. So would those still require notice of intent?
Looks like Jeff has the answer to that. And the Larrabees are shaking their head yes too.
I will try. In some cases, residential structures are not covered by the regular and normal maintenance of agricultural land. So that's something that once the delineation's set, if they're wanting to put that in an area that's subject to protection, so if they wanted to put that residential structure inside the 100-foot buffer zone, they'd have to come back and file for that structure specifically. There are some agricultural structural provisions that are exempted, but it's pretty specific to keeping livestock and agriculture that's there. So I think with it, and I think they've been just trying to identify all of the uses that they're looking to do to kind of help fuel their process. But I think everyone's been pretty clear so far that if it's not something that's within that exemption, is it may still require a filing, or if it can be located in an area outside of jurisdiction, then it certainly wouldn't. So. And obviously, any structures or things in some cases may also be subject to, I believe the residential structure would still be subject to potentially like HDC or some of the other town boards. But I am by no means an expert in their rules and regulations at all. So agricultural rules for wetlands protection are complicated enough. I don't need to stray into other crazy boards.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any other comments or questions from commissioners? And if not, Jeff, I just want to be clear, you recommend a positive 2A and a negative 5 for this one?
So I'll try to get the quote correct. Joanne will have it right in the paperwork, but it would be a positive 2A, and then the negative 5, the exempted activities that we would cover specifically are, it's 310 CMR. Sorry, I have it right in front of me. It's 310 CMR 10.04, the definition of agriculture, and then it would be the Code of the Town of Nantucket, Chapter 136, Section 136 3B. I believe that's correct. Joanne tried to show me her screen, and I can't read it from here, but I'm pretty sure I got that. I'm pretty sure I got that reference correct, but that would be our recommendation.
All right. Is there a motion to that effect? Motion made by Joe. Is there a second? Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye. LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Good luck, Larrabee boys. See you soon. Aye.
Great.
Thank
That
you very
is
much.
carried
Good luck.
unanimously. Yeah, thank you. Good luck with your planning. I'm excited to see what you guys do with it.
We're very excited too. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for your hard work on this, guys. I know it's quite the process. So
We're going to keep at it.
So,
Great.
you got it.
Thank you.
Very cool.
All right, so
I'm
we're
just happy there aren't more farms of this size on Nantucket because the paperwork and the exemptions are really a pain to keep track of. So, thank goodness there's only like 4 to deal with.
yeah.
So, I don't know how the guys in Central and Western Mass deal with like hundreds of these. It's crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. All right, so this moves us on to the Town of Nantucket C Street PS FM number 3 alignment. I don't see Madison Gleason on. Jeff, are you taking this one?
I hadn't planned on it. Did we get any correspondence from them, Joe? That they
Should we hold for representation?
Yeah, roll them over to January 28th.
Do you need a motion?
I think Jeff and Joanne are trying to sleuth out any emails they might have gotten. And then I don't think we'll need a motion. I think it'll just carry. So Jeff, you're muted.
I am not familiar enough with all the ins and outs of this. I know they're just trying to request of whether or not the area is subject to protection. But I was hoping they would be there to go through it because it would have been really helpful.
Yeah. So we'll just roll this one over to the next meeting.
That would be
Perfect.
wonderful.
All right. So that brings us on to order.
Sorry.
Okay, so that brings us on to orders of conditions. Jeff sent these out earlier. We're going to start with Mary Jo Buckland at 113 Hummock Pond Road. And that's one that we closed last week.
Sorry, let me unmute here. So this one's a little bit tricky, guys, and I apologize for the logistical headache that's there. But we closed this at our last meeting, and today is 21 days from when we closed it. So we really need to issue it today. So Joanne, as soon as you guys make a decision one way or the other on this, is going to email you the signature page. And if before you guys all sign off your computers for the night, if you could sign it, that would be really awesome because then we can get it issued on time. So it'll magically appear in your email, probably while we're doing the other orders. I know she has it all ready to go, depending on how we decide on it, but that way we can get it issued on time. So that being said, I did send the order out to everybody today. Just bringing it up. It was for the project on 113 Hummock Pond Road. It was essentially a septic system. That was a septic system redo, but we also had that area that had been removed that they needed to do some pretty substantial restoration in. So just to kind of run through, had kind of our same normal restoration requirements for survivorship, partial cert for the initial plantings, invasive species removals, a contract for the restoration and monitoring work, and then for that area to be permanently marked. I'm open to any other suggestions or thoughts to that order as well.
I guess I don't really have any thoughts. I'd like them to start to get going on some of the restoration sooner rather than later. Like, I feel like they're still kind of parking cars too far back there in what would be like wetland buffer. And I don't know if we can condition those activities to stop or talk to the homeowner about the timeline?
Well, that's the thing is, I guess,
And we're at 21 days, so.
well, I mean, you could certainly put a condition in there that, I mean, I would suggest maybe prior to the start of work, the applicant shall provide a contract for the restoration and work for the monitoring to cover the life of the permit. You could change that from prior to the start of work, just to kind of keep their feet to the fire, to say, within 30 days of the expiration of the appeal period, the applicant shall provide, and then the appeal period will run in case there's an appeal. And then they would have essentially 1 month to provide that contract for that work to take place.
Is anybody else interested in that? If not, we can, you are, Joe?
No, I'm sorry. I was sorry. Go ahead. What?
Because this is kind of on the clock, I want to make sure not to make a change unless everybody is kind of behind it. So if everybody's okay the way it is, then that's fine.
I will say this is a lot where they're a little bit under the gun to get their failed septic system replaced. And I know the Board of Health has been cracking the whip on this, because I think that's ultimately what got the restoration plan filed. Is the Board of Health said, if you do not replace your septic system that has failed, then we are going to start issuing daily fines to you. And I think that's finally what kind of got the ball rolling here.
Well, then I'm fine with the way it's drafted. If nobody has any amendments, is there a motion to issue as drafted? Motion made by Mark, seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to 5 Sherburne Way LLC at 5 Sherburne Way.
All right. While I'm loading up here, Joanne has sent you guys that signature link.
And I just want to clarify, Joanne, that
Likely
means
split.
I'm coming by to sign tomorrow, right? Or am I?
That's fine.
Yeah,
You
that
don't
would
have
be
to-
great.
Okay.
You can send you a
the-
quick text.
The digital signature will show up as being from tonight, so we'll be good.
Okay.
Just as long as no one watches the recording, but that's fine.
Okay. Seth, you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry. I just noticed that in the 113 Homey Pond Road that we just made a motion to issue, at the bottom of those 2 pages, there's the wrong address, applicant, and permit number.
All right. I can change that. You don't even need to make an amendment. But thank you for catching this, Seth. Just in the footer,
Yeah, in there further.
let me guess, it says 10 Monomoy Road or Monomoy Creek Road. Yeah, I knew I forgot.
Yes.
And Mahler.
I'll fix it, but thank you. Good catch.
All right. So 5 Sherburne Way.
All right, so just to run through really quickly on some of these. So we have our findings that we're required to put in there now related to the new structure in the top of the coastal bank, that they don't qualify for coastal engineering structures in the future, as finding 2 and 3 for the local and state act. And then I had our pool conditions.
Looks pretty good to me, but I can see you guys are still reading.
Good to me.
All right, so is there a motion to issue as drafted? Motion made by Dave, it looks like seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to High Tide Partners LLC at 8 Ackermuck Way, Lot 1. Seth?
Yeah, we talked about adding a condition requiring the applicant to maintain trees with a 4-inch DBH or larger within the landscaping area.
I cheated, and during the hearing portion, I added a condition 24 that reads, the applicant shall maintain all trees greater than 4-inch DBH that are native species and within the 50-foot setback.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Seth.
So nice. It's nice having 2 screens during meetings because then I can change stuff as you guys talk about it for things that we need to have.
Waste of town money.
I mean, I could take longer to do it, I
He's
guess.
saving us time. So
Careful with that, Joe.
our precious time.
Well, Joanne's sharing her screen. You know, it's like maybe he needs 4 screens.
Well, Joanne's rolling 3 right now, so I'm only going 2. I've thought about getting a 3rd, but it may be much.
Here I am squinting at my tiny little MacBook.
Move is amended.
All right, is there a second? Seconded by Dave, so by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to 16 Western Preservation Trust LLC at 16 Western Ave. Seth?
Yeah, can you just update the footer on this one too?
Yeah, man, I am not winning tonight on footers. So thank you, Seth. But yes.
Any other changes to this one? If not, is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
So motion made by Joe, seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Nantucket Memorial Airport at 96 and 98 Washington Street. No,
I got the footer on this one.
Jeff, can we, or should we add a condition that all of the piles are actually removed because it's a little different in their plan description?
Sure, you could add a condition 19 that all piles are required to be removed. And I think that's pretty simple.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts on this one, or is there a motion to approve as amended?
This was where the Great Harbor Yacht Club wanted to build a town, a 3-bay wide free launching ramp. And the airport refused to give up their abandoned pipeline at the time. And we missed the boat on that one. I know, it was very sad, but they offered to do it for free. And
But
Dredd.
make a good decision.
And parking.
I gave them the price to remove it, and the airport denied it. Al Peterson thought that pipeline was going to be resurrected.
Did you really? Okay, well.
Some good Nantucket history right there. Seth?
I'll move to approve as amended.
Perfect. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. And that moves us on to other business, approval of minutes from December 17th, 2020. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at the minutes, but thank you, Terry, for always keeping such great minutes for us. And if there are no concerns about the minutes, if there's a motion to issue as drafted.
Motion to issue is drafted.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll give Mark the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And again, thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
And now that moves us on to reports. We don't have Crack with us tonight. CPC,
Nothing to report.
NP and EDC. Oh, you're muted, Maureen.
All right, yeah, the last meeting, we discussed the redrafting of various area plans, including, they're going to be doing one for Lily Street, and Nantucket and the harbor, and, oh, let me look and see if I can find, what was the other one? And Surfside, no, sorry. Lily Pond, Nantucket, Surfside, and Sconset are all being updated. And that was the most interesting thing. So.
Thank you, Maureen.
Relevant thing.
I'm interested to see those updates.
Yes, especially on, they're creating a new sub area for Lily Pond. So that'll be interesting.
Oh, Jeff seems interested in that one too.
I'm very interested in Lily Pond because Lily Pond has been I don't want to say a little bit of a thorn in all of our sides, but a thorn in the side for the sense that it's such an interesting area for drainage and what's going on. I'd be really interested to participate in that area plan or sit in on a little just to talk about what's going on as far as water management for that area, for sure.
Yeah, they hadn't provided any, it was just that they were, I think, announcing it was going to be done. And I don't think they've decided who's going to be on it or anything like that. But I assume they would look to you to be on it to advise it. So
I'd be happy to, especially for that one.
Yep.
I would be willing to bet that the land bank would also love to participate in that too. I know Rachel and I today were just talking about Lily Pond.
Yeah.
So it's a very popular spot to talk about right now.
Yes.
Really is. So we'll look forward to more information about those plans at a later meeting, I'm sure.
Yep.
All right, so this moves us on to monitoring reports, 5 Loretta Lane. Did everybody see that in the packet? Or was it? Yeah, it was in the packet.
Just we did get a couple more. Wilkinson sent a couple more. It just missed the packet deadline, so they'll be in for you next time. But they, when you're in that time of year where they start to send in their 2020 reports.
Thank you. I always love reading the reports because I just feel like it's such success, when we actually get the report showing the positive changes, because obviously nobody sends us reports when they haven't done what they're supposed to do. All right, enforcement update.
Yeah, so we've kind of continued sending out tickets to people that are not following the rules. I will say, on a positive note, if anyone wants to see it too, Toscana was recontracted to clean up 287, 289 Hummock Pond Road, the house that was falling into the ocean that was on Mothball Way. They have been cleaning it up. They've removed a pretty significant amount of the concrete and the piles and cleaned some of it up. The videos and things that I saw, it looked pretty good. It does always look with those, obviously, when they're excavating concrete out. Some of the sand does get disturbed, but they, kind of put it back in place after they shook off the concrete. But a pretty substantial amount of that is gone. I was going to head out there tomorrow to take kind of a physical inspection of it again and update my photos. I was due to do that today or tomorrow. So But that is underway, and they have been contracted to get that site 100% cleaned up. So that is now happening. So I don't know. I like to believe it's because we sent them a ticket that they spurred them into action with that, for the 2 lots, the $100 that they got charged. But I don't know. But regardless, either ways, it's getting picked up. So that was a positive to that, and then we'll go from there.
What was the address, Jeff?
It's 287, 289 Hummock Pond Road is the legal street address. Most people remember it's the house that's at the very end of Mothball Way. So it's the one that lost like 65 feet of bank in the fall.
I think of it as the house that they were going to put in that plastic swimming pool because we gave them so much grief. That was the last, didn't we finally approved that, and it was the next week, that it all fell into the ocean. So anyway.
Pretty much. And I think now from my last talk with some of the folks involved there, they have to do some pretty heavy revisions to what they were thinking of doing, because I don't think they can fit the house that's existing and a Title V compliant system for the septic system on the lot anymore. So I think they're going to have to come back through permitting from scratch again, or just find somewhere else to go.
Joe, you had your hand up?
Yes, through the chair. So Jeff, I sent you a picture or a pin about 4 Grove Lane.
Oh, 4 Grove Lane with the pipes in the wetland.
Yeah.
So I spoke to both CNC and David Gray for the town sewer department, and they have assured me that those are to be picked up and will not be back in that area again for the sewer pipes that had gone in there. And they have also, I said, in the future, any area that there's a wetland, don't store your stuff anywhere near it. And they said, understood. So that'll be rectified. But thank you, Joe, for sending that in, because that's not a street that.
Oh no, I was biking by it and I was like, is that really laid in the wetland? It was kind of a.
So apparently the one construction guy that I talked to, who was just kind of one of the boots on the ground workers, said they had stacked it up on the road, and then in one of the storms it had rolled down the hill and piled up down there. And I was like, well, why didn't you pick it up? And he's like, well, it wasn't hurting anything. And I was like, pick it up. It's like, it needs to go. So it is what it is, but they have said they'll be more cognizant of that in the future.
Okay.
So
thank you.
well, my favorite was it wasn't hurt nothing. I was like, jeez. It's sitting there, like one of the pipes was actually in water. There's like water through the pipe. And it was just like unbelievable. But
It's like saying floating plastic in the ocean isn't hurting anything until it gets eaten by an animal.
So, but yeah. So hopefully that's addressed. But I'll swing back by there again too, just to make sure that it hasn't blown back in, or just to see where they ended up putting all that stuff.
Just one more thing. So someone said that someone called me and asked me to go out to, was it 117 Baxter Road? Someone was still doing some work on the exterior, but when I got out there, no one was there, and I don't know if you've heard any more about that.
We did get confirmation. I think, did we get that green card today or yesterday? Yesterday, that they did finally sign for their citations. So they have picked those up for sure. So hopefully we'll be hearing from them soon, but we definitely keep it in there. I haven't seen anyone. I've been by there like 3 times in the last 2 weeks and haven't seen anyone mucking around outside or doing anything, but that doesn't mean that something's there. And sometimes we get calls for people on sites like that where it's a caretaker that's popping through to check a property and people think they're doing something. But Baxter Road is in my regular rotation of spots that I check, so they get regular look-sees.
Yeah, I'm normally on Sankaty Road, so it was the guy called me and said, "Hey, just swing by there," and I didn't see anyone. So
no,
but I just was curious if you had gotten any calls. Okay.
All right. So commissioners' comments. Jeff, I guess I have 2, and they kind of tie with enforcement. So I'm worried that the property right next to Hollywood Farm, if you're looking from the cranberry bogs, it would be the southern property. I think they're doing illegal work too, unless it's actually part of Hollywood Farm.
I think that's part of Hollywood Farm.
Okay.
So at this point, I think I've sent them at least 2 or 3 citations at this point. I'm just not getting any traction. So we might have to figure out a way to step that up, or just wait for the police to roll that into a criminal complaint.
Yeah, because
So-
it's pretty bad out there. I know I was walking with my mother who never goes out there, and she goes, wow, it looks like a junkyard. Like when you're looking from the cranberry bog now, the buffer zone they've like filled.
Yeah, it's
bad.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like every other enforcement that we send out and tickets to, we always at least get like a call or anything, and it's been total crickets from them. And the mailings come back and they pick them up and just nothing at all. So, I mean, if I were getting a weekly ticket for, $350, I think at some point I would respond. But
I know my piggy bank can't sustain that
No.
many tickets a week. So,
and at some point, like I said, at some point you cross the threshold and you get collected. So I'll have to check in. I'll check in with the detective who handles those to see where those all stand.
great. And then my second property to report, I guess, is the beach path from Surfside, from the public beach parking lot. I think that I hadn't walked down there in a while. And I think with COVID, like people expanded that walkway big time. Like it used to be about the length of a car or a little wider than a car. And now it's a car and a half or maybe 2 with side trails going on the side. So I don't know if the town can put in like barrier fencing or something, but we've got to get that dune field back.
Yeah. I'll check with Rob and Sheila to see what the plan is, but I think at a minimum, we could probably at least put in the kind of post and rope fencing that they use to delineate passages of travel, and hopefully that will suffice.
Yeah, I think that would be great because it's like extreme out there. Joe?
I just want to say congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. LaFleur. Congratulations, Dave and Mary Beth.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
No problem.
Yeah, I didn't have much to do during the holiday. I figured I'd throw in on a wedding, make things interesting.
Congratulations.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the
That's why we got the
20th,
pink bubble.
we had a very small, quiet little ceremony at Brant Point. It was perfect.
Oh.
Well, that's awesome. A great way to begin the new year. That's a great commissioner comment, Joe. I like it.
Thank you. He was trying to slide it in. He didn't want anyone to know.
Well, he
That's not true. It's just, after 23 years, half the island thinks we're married anyway. So
That's all right. I called him with the work question on his day off on his cell phone, and he's like, "I'm off today. I'm getting married tomorrow," and I was like, "What?" So
that's
sneaky.
very positive news. Congratulations.
David, are you a blushing groom over there?
Yes, he is.
I would say he is because you look
I'm very
like
happy.
you like it, Dave. That's great.
That is great. Any other?
It's the lighting.
It's just the lighting.
We need good news. So
Yes,
that
we do.
Good news. All right. So it doesn't look like there's any other commissioners' comments, administrator staff reports.
Yeah, I just got a couple, and it's hard to follow up the good news of Dave getting married, so I'm just going to wet blanket everybody. So thank you, Joe, for doing that now. This one, we're still working on some backup dates for the SBPF annual review that we're going to try to hopefully get to send everyone. We're just trying to herd the cats between Greg Berman and town council and everyone involved. In a crowded Zoom schedule for public participation and YouTube schedule for public participation. Obviously, that's not a meeting that you can just do we'll put it out and then we'll put the recording up like 2 days later. public meeting style that people are already actively asking when it's going to be. So we're trying to find a space and a time to do that. Hopefully we'll get that squared away, and we'll email you guys some dates to get us some feedback on, hopefully in the next couple of days, and have that scheduled here in the next couple of weeks. Obviously some issues that I know I've spoken to, I think almost everybody, with the exception of a few that has some pretty serious questions and concerns. And obviously there's some pretty serious concerns. So we'll get those dates to you. Tied in with that as well is kind of the ongoing struggle a bit with the properties. I don't know why I get the directions mixed up, to the south of the geotubes, the old core structures that are there, and getting those back into compliance and dealing with that. That we also need to kind of wrap up once and for all. So we're going to add that back to the agenda for the next meeting to hopefully get all that information to you and try to get everything kind of buckled back together now that the holiday is passed. So we'll probably add that to the 128 meeting for an update with some information from staff that we've collected and compiled. So hopefully we'll get that back on track. And then we'll also been kind of diligently working away at the regulatory updates that we've been talking about. So my personal goal is to have that to you guys by the end of next week, kind of at the latest, for the topics that we talked about, with some draft information in that. And then we can have some time for people to take a look at it, and we'll set a schedule to go from there. So that's the hopes for all of that. Other than that, Happy New Year to everybody. I'm glad we didn't have any like rioters interrupt our meeting today. So that was kind of a big win. So
Thank God for that. Mark, you had a comment or question?
I'm good. Thank you.
So, and with other good news, Dave got married, and tomorrow Ashley is getting a new child. She's getting her puppy tomorrow. So there's other at least good positive news for everybody. So.
Oh, I have a question for you, Jeff. What's your association with George Tom?
George Tom?
Thom. He's on
Facebook
all the time with your puppies.
So, all right. So my wife thought it was a really good idea that she wanted everyone to see it. So she has been like posting pictures constantly. Like she does like a daily thing. She, and she gets so many people that are like, thank God you post those. It's been the highlight of my winter. And she legitimately feels pressure every day to get at least a post or two up. And there are so many people that just like repost it or retweet it. The puppies have been available for people to like go and, I mean, they just live in one of the greenhouses on the farm recently, or before they were out in a few other spots. And, the farm's pretty public, especially during like Christmas tree sales and things where people were there and they took pictures with the puppies and things like that. So there are 8 million pictures of those things out, and people that have reposted and those
Jeff,
things.
was that your daughter being mugged by about 10 puppies one day on the ground?
Yeah, that was our 3-year-old. She got mauled.
That was major assault.
So, the sad thing is the middle child, our 10-year-old son, he like made it a job the last 3 weeks where he would like get them all in the backyard, and then he would trip and fall and then just like get mobbed by puppies for like 2 minutes. And then we'd be like, what are you doing? Or he'd get up and complain that he got scratched. And we're like, dude, you literally provoked them into going on top of you. So we don't feel sorry for you at all. The 3-year-old would just get tagged.
How many are you keeping, Jeff?
0. We are keeping mom, and that is it. We are getting rid of all 13. Thank God. So I don't recommend 13 puppies to anyone.
What was your goat milk bill?
More than I like to think. So, but we had some of the folks involved chipped in and got some goat milk, and we had a few people that donated goat milk that were just like, we love the pictures. We knew you guys were doing it. Here's some goat milk. Like, it was pretty good. So it was nice, one of those little things. And I know we kind of like, we should get some goats on the farm just to have this backup going forward. But it was fun. It was fun to do, and fun to get to bottle feed for 2 or 3 weeks and get to see them. But they are to the point where they're big enough where they need to be in space where they can run around and do what puppies do and get into spots where they're going to be. And we have blessed to have 13 really great families and individuals taking dogs, and they are all going to great spots, and most of them are staying on island. So hopefully we'll see. And hey, you never know. In 3 weeks, we might even get an appearance from Fig in the screen. We'll have to see.
And if we ever have site visits again, I'll be sure to bring her.
So, but we'll have to see. I'll be interested to see her. It'd be nice to. I always love seeing the pups.
You can bring her down when you come to sign.
I will definitely.
I know. Better be careful. If you bring her down, she might see me and be like, whoa, why am I going back with you? I'm going to go with that guy. He bottle feeds me. So.
Oh, good stuff.
It's good.
All right. Well, at this point, on a happy puppy note, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Joe.
Oh, nobody wants to go.
We want to talk about puppies.
Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
I reluctantly, I want to talk more about puppies.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Erisman, I, LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye, I want to go have dinner.
Topham.
Aye. Be well, everyone.
Before you guys all go to dinner and adjourn, please sign the Bucklands one at a minute.
You're late.
Joanne
Jeff.
sent them out.
It's all signed, Jeff.
All done.
Good night, all.
I think we all got it. Good night, everyone. Happy New
Thank
Year.
you, guys.
Congratulations, Ashley.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
See you soon.
Congratulations,
Happy New Year.
You walk by our house, we'll get our pups together.
Definitely.